Greetings to you, fellow humans of planet Earth, and welcome to the Thunk Tank podcast. So I just had an Imperial IPA while editing this episode. I think it was a bit above 10%. So here I go. Time for a short intro. Welcome to the Thunk Tank podcast. This episode was about travel. So we talked about our various travel experiences. Like both of us, me and Johnny at least, have traveled very recently. Joe's been a lot of places too. So we get into those stories. I was in Turkey recently. I also went to London back in November, like 2 months ago. And Johnny, back this Oktoberfest, was in Germany and then also stopped in Amsterdam. So we all had recent travel stories and just general experiences with traveling that we wanted to talk about and just kind of, just have a conversation about and like get into like why travel is important, like the kinds of things that we've gotten out of travel over the years. A lot of people don't get the opportunity to travel or don't make the opportunity to travel, and that can be a really it's just there's something that the brain figures out after traveling, and it puts things into a different framing, puts your life into a different framing when you travel and kind of see that the whole project of a life and being alive is like, there's many ways to do it, and you get to see all these different cultures and how they solve the various problems of what it means to be a human. So, besides it just being a fun experience, you can also kind of trip your brain out on those kinds of thoughts and, just figure some things out. So we're really into that vibe. So we did an episode on this. Hope you enjoy it. Anything else? Let's see. Patreon. If you want to support us and help us keep the lights on, so to speak, you can go over to patreon.com/thunktankpodcast. And I think it's as little as $1 an episode. Helps us keep the thing hosted. Other than that, just thanks for listening. If you want to help us out, you can leave a rating or a review on wherever you listen to podcasts, especially Apple Podcasts. I think it helps a lot there. Just enjoy the episode. See you in the tank.
Attention humans, this is a Thunk Tank. Please insert this podcast directly into your nearest orifice for viewing pleasure.
Okay, you ready? Oh, shit.
Welcome to the Thunk Tank. Welcome to the Thunk Tank.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there you go.
Come into our Thunk Tank.
Luke, don't switch to the other peanuts.
Welcome to the Thunk Tank. Come in the tank. We're thinking, and we're drinking,
and we're thunked.
Oh my god, I'm probably more beer than man if we go far enough back at this point.
And we're live.
Does that mean we actually started?
Yeah.
Okay, well that's...
All right, hey guys.
What's up, Johnny? What's up, listeners? Welcome to the Thunk Tank podcast.
Oh my god.
This one's all about...
travel. Welcome to the Isle Getaway of Thunk Tank Podcast, where all your woes... that's all I got.
There's nothing like sitting on... No, keep it going. There's nothing like sitting on the beach, sipping out of a coconut, watching the decaying remnants of colonialism around you, as smiling faces that secretly resent you for ruining their beautiful country and bringing your shitty imported ideals and not understanding why things aren't the same where you came from, even though you went somewhere to see something different. You're still not happy about it.
And then see your wristband on your left wrist, which gets you unlimited margaritas, and think, is seven margaritas too much before lunch?
I'm wasted.
And you don't really care. Your skin's so taut and puckered from being in the sun for 7 hours hammered. And you keep smiling and try to be polite to the cleaning lady, but you just see the horror on her face every time she walks out of your room.
Now it just sounds like
we wanted to hear that rant without lunatic. The music.
Yeah. It gets kind of like not more dark, but a different type of dark without the music.
It's definitely dark. I always do that on vacation. I think about like, oh wow. So if I go, especially if you're like somewhere in the like tropical, I always pull up my phone. I'm like, when did they get rid of slavery? Like, you know, it's just you wonder because it's different.
You think
it wasn't done across
person thing to possibly think.
Well, it just wasn't done across the board. So some places you're like, oh, I wonder when they got rid of it here, and sometimes it's like way before, and it's like, oh, maybe that's why they're handling things a little better, or. But you're right. It's like, oh, this place was part of Spain until the 60s.
There's something kind of contrived about it too, with the whole resort, like idea of going to a resort where. That's not what things are supposed to be like, right? That's not how the people there live. That's not how you live. You're just
why
there.
You're really just going for the weather. Like you're not going for the experience of the place,
Have you
the
guys
cultural
both been to a resort
terroir
like that?
I've been to the Caribbean. Sort of at a place like that, I would say.
Because like that's one type of vacation, and like we can talk about our experiences there, good and bad.
And evil.
But I think we should also get into the cool parts of traveling, like what cities you see and like the cool shit you get to do there. Like if you do that, you know.
Yeah.
Johnny was just in Germany and Amsterdam. I was in Turkey and London. Joe, you've been to London, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Even just traveling within the United States, like, there are like cool things, you know.
Yeah.
So. Anyways, let's go to the resort thing though, because I think that's your classic vacation vibe.
Well, for so many people, that's their go-to because it's simple.
I haven't been to like a big like one of those all-inclusive things, but I have been on a cruise, which is just that on water, and it's so weird because you're in like an all-inclusive hotel resort, but it's also the party, but it's also getting you there.
It's also a toilet bowl on the ocean.
Yeah, but it's also just gross, and you're crammed in with people you don't really like.
What did I say?
I've never been attracted to the cruise as like a vacation.
I don't think you could pay me to go on a cruise. I mean, Johnny, would you go on another cruise? Like, what would it take to get you to go on another cruise?
Oh, I would go. Last time it was a week cruise on Norwegian, which is in like their brand new ship. So it was an expensive cruise, but I got to go for free because a friend's brother relapsed and had to go back into rehab. So his family was like, you don't get to come on a cruise ship now. And they felt bad because he was like, well, I have to just go on a cruise with my parents now? That sucks. So they let him invite a friend, and I was his only friend with a passport because I was like 19, and who has a passport at 19? But I did. So I got to go, and all I had to do was, the only thing not included was the alcohol. I probably spent $400 in a week on booze.
But
I was hammered for a week straight. So when you think about it,
hammered.
It was a hard hammered. We ended up getting Robitussin at Bahamas. Not Robitussin. What's it called? A codeine. They sell it over the counter in the Bahamas, and we put it in a Long Island iced tea. And I thought there was a storm, and I didn't realize I was the one just falling against the walls. Everyone else was walking
You were the
fine.
storm.
Yeah,
I was like, wow, those waves are bad.
Today, Captain, like morning.
No, it was. We were docked.
Why do I do this fucking job?
Yeah.
I used to be in the military. Now I drive around drunk idiots. Sail?
They didn't. Nobody cared though, But yeah, I would go for a free one. It was cool.
I would definitely go for free.
I wouldn't.
Or if you had a big group, like if you're going like 20 people, and you're like, if we go somewhere, we're all going to go off and do different things. If we're trapped on a boat, we'll all hang out.
Yeah, but
so I could see that.
I don't know. I just feel like I'd rather be on the beach and like just go somewhere where you can go to a beach and chill and go in the water.
But I think those cruise ships often like park somewhere, and then you can get like time like that. I mean, I don't know. Each one's different.
Whatever.
Our friend Kevin is a jazz saxophone player. He used to work on cruises, in the
he
bands.
Used to perform,
So he would be on the same ship, like going around Europe or wherever for like 6 months at a time.
Wait, really? He was on that long?
Oh man, we should have had him on this episode.
I know, we messed up.
What night is it? Friday?
He's probably working.
Oh, he's bartending hardcore right now.
Yeah. Still. Anyways, but cruises are weird. I might go on it with the right people and for the right thing. I would do an Alaskan cruise because how else am I going to see glaciers? You know, you don't really see them when you're on the land or on them. You want to watch them calve off into the ocean and see the whales and shit like that. Especially because that's going to be gone in our lifetime. Yeah. I would do that before a Caribbean cruise again.
Yeah.
To your Alaska point, Johnny, when I was in Seattle for New Year's, I got to Seattle, and then I thought to myself, I'm pretty close to Alaska. It's still really far. It's like going back to
closer
New York.
Than you've ever been, though.
But it's I was like halfway there, and I thought about it. I seriously considered, hey, maybe I should just take a trip up, a brief, excursion up to Alaska.
Like that's probably only an 8-hour flight.
Because it's relatively cheap comparatively from Seattle. And then I remembered it was January, and Alaska in January is like
you don't do that unless you know what you're getting, kind of thing.
Yeah, you don't go there and be like, I'll get a room at the hotel. But we don't have one of those. Yeah. It's like, oh shit.
Yeah, they all close down for the winter.
No hotel.
Knocking
and it's
on
like,
doors.
oh god, why do you guys have Russian accents? I thought I was in Alaska. You are. And I'm like, So, yeah.
And you can't live in an igloo because polar bears will eat you.
Is that how that works?
Yeah, they can just dig through. You don't know how big you make an igloo.
Dude,
if you have any amount of food in there, they'll come and get it, and you count as food too.
Polar bears are basically like a giant bulldozer. Like they can just dig into things and they get wherever they want to go.
That's true.
Yeah, but you know what? Screw polar bears. They don't travel, so
All right,
they're dead to me this episode.
Then.
Oh, we're gonna derail hard.
Maybe if they didn't drink all that Coca-Cola back in the 90s, they wouldn't have been wiped out by diabetes. I don't feel that bad.
Actually, we gotta say what beer we're drinking.
Oh, we're drinking. What do we have here? Wild Leap Brewing Company, solid ground
from Georgia.
Cold brew coffee stout. Really good. Really nice.
Yeah. I love the cold brew version of coffee stouts.
I'm loving them.
The coffee flavor is like really clean and smooth. Mm-hmm. It's never like the aggressive like flavors. That's generally true of cold brew coffee in general. Like,
although I do wonder,
like that.
Do you, or maybe Johnny, you know more about this? Like, how much caffeine are you actually getting in something like that? Is it variable? Is it none? Like, how does that actually?
You definitely get some, because you think about it, there's two ways to do it. You make coffee and add it, or you add the beans to the beer in the tank in the fermenter. And if you do that, it's usually it's after fermentation. It's usually at like 40 degrees, 50 degrees, 30 something maybe, depending on what it's at.
You're not going to.
So you're basically, and you have to let it sit for a few days because it's cold. So you're basically making cold brew with the beer. So I imagine you get more caffeine from that than if you just poured in coffee.
Yeah, because it never says on it like contains caffeine. Or
I bet you get more caffeine with cold brew because the extraction is.
But you're cold brewing. But you're cold brewing. Anyways, the beer is your cold brew then.
But I wonder if the water chemistry of the beer allows for more or less extraction.
There is already a lot of stuff in that water already.
Yeah, so maybe the water can't hold as much.
Yeah. I don't know, but I definitely, as somebody who's cut down on a lot of caffeine in the last year, when I have a coffee beer, I feel it. I feel my heart rate increase.
Oh, really?
I got to cut down on caffeine.
Oh,
even if I have a beer with, because I'm very sensitive to caffeine now, even if I have a beer with like a lot of chocolate in it, I'll feel it from that. I'll feel the caffeine from the dark chocolate.
I guess I'm just not sensitive to caffeine like that.
You said,
or you don't drink, or you don't drink.
Like, you don't drink enough. You definitely drink too much caffeine.
Okay, today I had a shot of espressos, then I made a latte, then I came here, and then I had a cup of coffee.
Yeah, I'm having a cup of green tea, and it's probably the first caffeine I've had since before Thanksgiving.
So, like, what do you mean you don't get enough caffeine?
I still feel like slightly shitty and mildly suicidal. That means I need more caffeine, right?
Okay, now
you're confusing that with the human condition, Luke.
Yeah.
Your caffeine doesn't help that much with that.
Seems like I need a vacation.
It was just such a good let us get back on track segue, and then I don't know what that vaudeville whoopee cushion noise was.
It was a little bit.
As if I know.
All right, mofo, tell me about London. You brought London up.
So yeah, London was the most recent
first impressions
adventure.
Go.
Accents are really silly, and if I'm a little bit drunk, I start to imitate it like subconsciously. And that's not a good thing, probably.
Well,
you do that in general, though, which seems dangerous as a traveler.
Yeah, like even in the South, I did that a little bit, but
a lot.
General impressions of London, super trippy to see cars going the wrong way.
I love how you're just diving in Amerocentric first. No,
I mean, it's true. There's a reason these jump out at you.
I was there with my Turkish girlfriend, which means like she almost couldn't understand anything from the English accent.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because she knows American English, not English.
And, like I think back to when I was in middle school or high school when I started watching The British Office. I didn't understand shit Ricky Gervais was saying, and I had to have subtitles. But now I've sort of gotten used to that, and I can understand it just fine.
I remember when my sister tried to watch the British Office, she got like 5 minutes in and just looked at me and said, what is this? What
For
are they
some
saying?
people, it just doesn't take, right?
And she just couldn't watch it. She's like, I'm going to go back to the regular Office.
She's like, I'm out. I'm going back to the normal
Yeah, she
one.
said, I tried. It didn't take, so whatever.
But I loved the British Museum. That was the coolest thing I did there. I
would
think.
say when you and I were there, Johnny, that was my favorite thing too, the British Museum, because you really get to see the epic scope of how much shit the English have stolen over the centuries.
I know we did our colonization
It's
episode,
amazing.
but it's not until you go to some of those museums in Europe and you're like, wow, you guys really just ransacked the planet for
Having
a few
said
hundred
that,
years.
It's pretty cool.
It's amazing.
It's cool to have it all in one place. It's convenient
amazing,
for me to look at, but yeah, it's definitely like every now and then a country will ask for something back, and the response is usually like, "Nah, fair is fair. Finders keepers." That happened a few years ago with what was the hurricane that tore through the Philippines and like destroyed most of the Philippines? There was some town where village where the whole village got
I was
destroyed.
in Hurricane Andrew. He was too.
Yeah, the whole village got destroyed, though, and except for the church that was like a Spanish one that was built in the 1600s. It was the only thing left, and they asked for the church bell back that was put in it when it was built, that America stole during the Philippine Wars in like 1898 or something, and it just sits outside of like some place. It's like like outside of a church or something here in the middle of nowhere, and they asked for it back, and we were like, nah, I don't think so. We're gonna keep those bells, thanks.
Fair is fair.
I don't know where I'm going with that.
How would that work? Like, so let's say a modern country somewhere in the Middle East is laying claim to something from the Babylonian Empire or whatever. Like, to what extent does a country own that just because the land happened to be the same? It was a totally different... That'd be like America saying we own like Native American artifacts or something.
We do. If Russia came and just tried to take them, we'd be like, nope, those are ours.
Well,
like,
now,
get the fuck off our heritage
I
sites.
see what you're saying. Like, what if it's an artifact from this ancient culture that was spread out over several countries, right?
Yeah.
Oh, so like Roman artifacts in Spain, should Italy get those?
Yeah, right, exactly. Like, who made them? Was it soldiers who were Roman citizens who made them? Was it the locals, but they were part of the Roman Empire, but there is no Roman Empire?
Well, then anything from before 1776 or 1789 or whatever, 83, is English, and we should send it back to them under that same thinking. That doesn't make sense.
No, the tea's already gone.
I'm not proposing anything specific. I'm just
I don't know how we got into museum reparations. This is supposed to be about travel.
Yeah.
So anyways, the British Museum is probably the best thing you can do in London, I would say.
I don't know. The tower's pretty cool.
I went to the tower, but I didn't like pay for it and go in.
What?
I try not to pay. Like, they have this thing if you're ever traveling to London. It's called the London Pass.
Yeah,
and you can
we
like
did that.
buy a pass for like multiple things. There's different versions of it. Some of them are a big ripoff. Like, depending on where you want to go, you can just pay
we
for
were
separate
in
things.
London for 1 day, a day and a half, and I'm pretty sure we did the pass and we saw most of the stuff on it.
No, we were.
That's impossible in 1 day. There's like over 50 things.
We were in London
Oh, well,
for 3 days, and we went to the tower at least.
Johnny's
twice.
like, well, I was in London for 1 day, then I blacked out, and then
Oh no, we were hammered, but we
I
went to
remember
the tower
seeing a
multiple
lot.
times.
Yeah, because there's so much there. It took hours to see it all.
Actually, can I give a travel tip to anybody who goes to the Tower of London?
no, sorry, Johnny, what were you saying before?
really,
Yeah, so
really good tip, and Johnny will back me up on this. If you are interested in seeing the crown jewels, which are in the Tower of London, the way to do it,
What are the crown jewels?
they're like these insanely huge, bright jewels that you can't even look
like
directly at.
titty-sized diamonds. And
Yeah,
stuff.
they're diamonds that are so big and so bright and so finely cut that you seriously, as you go past them, you can't look directly at many of them because it's blinding.
Because they light them.
Yeah, they reflect.
Oh, they have lights coming down on
So,
them.
Yeah, they
so the
reflect so
crown.
brightly.
Joe, finish your thing, and then I want to rant about the crown jewels.
Fair enough. All right, so basically, if you want to see the crown jewels, because that's something that people are like, oh, we must go see the crown jewels. I mean, it's cool, but it's definitely not worth waiting online for 4 hours, which is what a lot of people wind up doing. So it's kind of like when you go to Disney World and you get there early, you go to the like ride that's going to be packed the most later first. It's like when you go to Disney World, you go to Space Mountain first immediately. And it's the same thing with Crown Jewels, because I remember we walked through the whole, system of lineage that you would normally do, and we saw it immediately. And then I remember watching people with the line like, way beyond where it normally is, and they don't even get.
Well, yeah, we went at they opened at 8 a.m. and we were there at 8:05 because our hotel our hotel was across the street. So we woke and we were all jet lagged. So we just woke up and walked over. And Kara was there, my wife, and she always asks people, which is a great thing too when you're traveling. She'll ask the people that work at the place or someone from there. Oh, what's the coolest thing to see? Or, you don't necessarily ask the waiter what's the best menu item at that restaurant. You ask where's their favorite place in town to eat. Because then they'll be honest.
Right.
They're going to tell you, they're going to push the special. They're going to push the special if they're told to push the special. But if you say, hey, this the best bar.
Where do you
this bar is
party
awesome.
after your shift?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And especially if you're I don't want to ruin a local spot by being the tourists that show up. They'll steer you towards a more welcoming place, though. But anyways, so we asked the guy at the counter, the lady or whoever, the person in the silly hat that they have there, the tower guard, and we're and she's like, "What's the coolest thing to see?" She's like, what's the coolest thing what should we see first? And she's like, well, the crown jewels get a really long line, but you guys are the 10th people in, so you should probably do that first.
Yeah, good call.
And Joe's right. We had to walk through, they had the velvet rope stuff set up for where scissors back and forth, scissor backs 10 times. You have to walk through the empty bank line or the airport security. It was like that. Right. And by the time we left, that whole space was full. There's hundreds of people waiting. And we were in there for there's a treadmill. You can't stop. Yeah. You have to keep moving.
Oh, are you allowed to walk on the treadmill forward?
Yeah, if you want to rush through it, I guess. But most people kind of try to waddle back.
What if you walk backwards though, because you want to stay staring at the crown jewels?
You're gonna
Someone's going to walk into you
by one of the dudes with the hat.
Then why can't they just have a non-moving
they do it.
walkway?
They do it because it wasn't that when we were there, but it gets so busy you just step on it and you just wait because it's so packed. Yeah. We were able to kind of backtrack and walk up and down a little.
Because
it's you just walk in and you step and then you go at those
4 hours to
it was cool.
Yeah,
I just don't think our generation is as into precious gems and diamond stuff, and who really cares about that stuff?
But
anymore?
It's cool historically,
But it's cool to just look at him and be like, wow, when that motherfucker started this war that I've read about, or when he met, when Walter Raleigh came back with some shit
and stuff, they bring it out for
and titty-sized diamonds, that's just cool by
huge.
itself.
It's definitely the biggest
That's what Johnny said. I'm just repeating it.
Yeah, I stand by it. I stand by that. There's some big stones and stuff, but the tower has so much cooler stuff.
The tower's so cool.
It was built 2 years after William the Conqueror in 1066 took over. He's like, I should build a castle so these English don't murder my knights.
Yeah,
and so it's over 1,000 years old. And as an American, it's just really cool to go to something that old that people still live in.
Yeah, I enjoyed London in general for thinking about how old things are, just tradition and stuff like that.
Yeah, you really see how and there's other places like that too, where these old cities, you can see how it builds on top over time.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
It's
too.
I highly recommend if you're ever traveling anywhere.
You said that a little Englishly. I highly recommend.
It's just in my subconscious, like I said.
You're too easily swayed, man. I'm telling you.
Save me from a future cult.
I know. I'm worried.
Yeah.
I always have my ear out for a dangerous cult.
You're already a thunker. You're a thunker for life. You're not allowed to leave, Luke.
Maybe that's what the frog suit is. Maybe that's the first step in your initiation. That's why we were sent the frog suit.
Ribbit. I was going to update about that weird student of mine, but that's not applicable to the travel episode.
In a future episode,
I'll update you on the student who might have tried to roofie me. But onto the travel episode. We're back.
We'll have that in the epilogue.
I highly recommend this general routine, which me and my girlfriend did in London pretty much for 4 out of the 5 days, which is you wake up, and you generally plan your day around where you're going to go, and then start with finding some breakfast in a coffee shop.
This is a really radical approach, Luke.
Do the first thing. No. Here's the catch.
Let me write this down. Hold on.
After the first thing, hit a pub early, like noon, 1 p.m. the latest. Have 4 to 5 beers, and then go to a museum.
4 to 5 beers.
Depends on your preference.
Wait, is this 1 p.m. Their time or real time?
1 p.m. in the local time of London, where you are.
All right, I'm just making sure.
6 p.m. here, I think.
Okay, now it makes sense to me as an American. Yeah, okay.
Because I was in the British Museum and this other one called, drawing a blank on the name, it was just another
National
history.
Gallery.
Victoria and Albert Museum, I believe it was called. Yeah. They had like a bunch of these old rugs from like ancient Iran and various places in the Middle East, and I was just looking at the design on these rugs, like the detail in the design and the perfect symmetry. These rugs are like, we're talking bigger than your house. These rugs, you know?
Oh, they're like the giant ones that they hang up. Yeah.
They hang up, it takes up the whole room. But if you walk up to it and you just start to look like, okay, let me follow this pattern. And I was just like really tracing the pattern all the way through the rug. I'm like, these motherfuckers got every detail exactly symmetrical.
Yeah.
Find that
And this was in the year like...
By hand.
I don't know. You know, before...
A long time ago.
It was a couple thousand years ago, let's say.
No, rugs aren't that old.
How old are rugs, Johnny?
Why is Johnny our rug go-to guy?
Listen, I know a lot about rugs. No, I don't. I don't know. Rugs are pretty old, I guess.
No, I don't think rugs are that old. I think it's like...
You don't think they had rugs in ancient Rome?
No, I think they did. I don't think there's any ancient Roman rugs still around, still alive. Like, there's very few Roman.
I don't know. They got
alive.
they got sandals and stuff.
Barely.
They find things made out of leather and things like that.
Like, you can't wear one. Like, it's gonna.
Yeah, but it's not. You shouldn't. If you had an ancient Roman rug that was in good shape and you used it as a rug, you're a piece of shit.
So what I'm gonna say is, in general, I think a good piece of advice with travel, no matter where you are, because I've been to some totally rando places, and one of the first things I do is just check out the museums because they're usually
but do
free
the
or
intel
cheap.
work beforehand too.
Well, no, I mean, I've gone to places like I went to Colorado last year, and I was in Denver. And I went down to Colorado Springs to check it out because it's like an hour and a half bus ride, and no idea like what's going on there in terms of museums and stuff. I get there, I just check on my phone. Where's the local whatever? There's a Tesla museum.
Oh, cool.
And apparently Tesla, he went there for a couple of years. Like
the car.
Eventually. But
no, Joe, you're right. That's how I found the Transport Museum in Glasgow.
Yeah.
It was just I had a day to kill, and I was like,
oh, too, like Transport
Museum. Yeah, one of the coolest museums, the Transport Museum that's in Glasgow, right? Or
Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's on the Clyde on the river, and it's got a tall ship. It's got a big wood, not wood. It's just. Yeah, it's got a steel hull, but it was sail and rigging, like it was a sail-powered ship. And it circled the world 4 or 5 times as a trading vessel. And then it was a training vessel for the Spanish Navy for like 50 years. Then it was half sank for 20 years. And now it's an awesome museum thing with a little shitty cafe on it. That actually had good sandwiches. But,
that's what it's all about. But that's
one of the cooler museums. But now, see, what kind of museum person are you, Luke? Because I think Joe is more similar to me. I think, and Kara's the same way, which I have to read everything. If it's a museum I like,
I take some time.
Well, so
I want to see everything.
I mean, at the British Museum, like, how could I possibly see everything even in one day, right?
Well, the British Museum is
but I did take my time going through the whole history timeline.
Yeah.
And I was walking from
you're better off doing
10,000 BC and then going to like Hammurabi's like code and then moving through to
Hammurabi? Is that how they say it there?
That's how no, Johnny, that's how cultured world travelers say it. So get with the program.
Excuse yourself.
And also all you who are listening who haven't been there,
I mean, it's just like that museum in Barcelona I love, but
you know what always bothers me too? Can I just say something really quick to preface this whole travel thing is that
people are pieces of shit when it comes to traveling about bragging and
none of this
you have to go back to Paris this year. Like,
I
go fuck yourself.
I remember I used to work at a country club in college because I was a broke college kid, and that place had rich people, and I would take their money.
Not a lot of it, but some of it.
Some of it,
yeah. We're all familiar, Joe, with how amazingly trickle-down economics works.
Yeah, it was the ultimate iteration of trickle-down economics. But I remember there was always a few people there who that was their vibe, where they were just like, they would talk about their trip to Paris, and then they would complain about stuff with the travel. And then I would say, yeah, that sounds great. I'd love to go someday.
Yeah.
Kind of like, shut up.
Yeah.
I've heard enough about your trip. And what bothered me wasn't that they were like, oh, yeah, it's great. It was their shock that I hadn't been. You mean you've never been? What do you mean?
You've never been to Paris? It's like, yeah, that costs like more money than I've ever made.
Exactly.
But I have I live in the South now, and I have the same conversation with people that are from here, and they'll be like, oh, I've never been outside of the state, or I've never been to, and they have a good job, and they can take time off, and it's like, what?
Yeah,
like,
so
dude,
part
you
of
should
it
go
is
to
just knowing you should
they hear
travel.
I'm from New York, and they're like, oh, I bet the city's amazing. I'm like, yeah, when I was 17 and I went to try to find underage beer for the first time, it was incredible. But some people it's not a thing for them. That's okay. I don't think you have to travel.
You don't have to do anything in this life, but I think it's a highly beneficial thing.
I think if you have the means and ability to do it, I mean, honestly, I see what you're saying where some people just might not get benefit out of it. But I think if you're going for reasons of, just genuinely keeping an open mind because this is something different to try and some different stuff to see and different stuff to do, I actually think it's a really good recalibration method, right?
It's definitely something
to take yourself outside of your normal routine.
That will click yourself into seeing yourself from a different place. Like the easy example that I thought of when I was arriving in the various places I've been that are different. I mean, obviously London is kind of the same, but like there are little things that are different, like how the police are dressed, like what kind of weapons they're carrying, like what kind of everything's a little bit different. And if you're in a country in a different language, then all that shit's different. Like,
yep.
And then when you come back to America, like I was going through JFK Airport, and I tried to imagine seeing JFK from like a Korean person's eyes or from a Turkish person's eyes, and like just seeing like what they see, like the data points that you get as you're going through customs. Like,
you're absolutely right, Luke. I didn't realize this is a good time for my Mark Twain quote on travel, but I didn't realize how shitty American airports were until I went to Europe, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much nicer. But
they have various things that are so much like such little smart fixes for the obvious problems.
I flew from Newark to Oslo to Munich to Amsterdam to Copenhagen to Newark on my trip.
This was just a few months ago, right?
Yeah, and so that's what, 5 airports or 4? Yeah, 5 airports in like a week. And the Newark airport was the most disgusting, depressing, disappointing, and just not
but that's
helpful.
A biased version of that because you're talking about New Jersey here.
Yeah. I mean, that's a bad example to pull up, but JFK isn't.
Which, if you haven't visited New Jersey,
places, but
keep on driving.
But this is my Twain. This is my Twain quote. Travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness, and many of our people need it sorely on these accounts.
It's
broad,
true.
wholesome, charitable views of men and things cannot be acquired by vegetating in one little corner of the earth all one's lifetime.
Okay, so basically what I said.
He said it.
Yeah, but
better.
Twain said it.
Yeah.
But that's a great way to put it. Like
I could say I said it, but really Twain said
Twain
it.
Twain said it how I would say it if I was a good writer. Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, there you go.
I get that.
I think the reasoning there is that at the basis of most like shitty beliefs, like if you're just kind of like needlessly biased against a culture for not a real reason, but just like a made up like some kind of phobia inside your own head, or what?
Like your dad said about the toilets in Turkey.
Well, yeah, like I know plenty of people who when I say like, oh yeah, I'm going to Turkey next month, should be fun, and in their head they're picturing like that one scene that the Jack Ryan like movie shows of the Middle East, where it's like hello, and I'm like walking through a desert with the heat like making the camera like and it's like nope, it's just going to be like New York City.
There's a camel. there's camels everywhere, right?
Well, like I had somebody like what was it, a student and like an adult student, and I was like, yeah, like I'm going to be mostly in Istanbul, like, and then. I was like, I might have to drive somewhere. I'm a little nervous about that. And she's like, oh, are there a lot of animals like in the road? I'm like, what? What animals? Like, what do you mean? Like, I mean, there are dogs and cats everywhere, but that's not like
that's animals.
Like,
so maybe that's what they meant.
No, I don't think she was hip enough to be like one, going a layer deeper to be like, oh, I've heard Istanbul's known for having cats all over the place and dogs.
You think she just thought that there's camels everywhere?
Yes, yeah, primarily.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyways, traveling definitely makes you understand that the way you do things, like your general culture, like your general behavior and your thought patterns and all that, that's just one solution to the like equation of being a human.
Yeah,
there are many
all
valid solutions to that. Like, sure, there's cultural behavior that you would say, yeah, that's not good. We should, not do that.
Yeah, like chopping off each other's heads.
Yeah, or various things. You don't even have to go into them, but
go into.
For example, like food is a great example where each culture has their own set of behaviors that evolves around food, and it's like one of the cooler aspects to like getting to know a country is like, let's get not like the in the touristy area food, but like let's ask a local person or someone who knows what's up. Like, where should I go if I want to get into this?
When people come to New York, I tell them, dude, you got to go Hard Rock Cafe, Times Square.
Yeah.
No. If you really want a good time, the Times Square Chili's.
Times Square Chili's?
No, the Times Square Olive Garden is the big tourist one.
Oh, that's actually, I think he's got us. I think the Olive Garden is.
Well, so my girlfriend's parents came to New York 2 summers ago, and for some reason her mom was just dead set on going to the Times Square Olive Garden.
Are you serious?
And I'm like, did
That's
she just like
sad.
read this in like an article online or something?
Wait, I guess they don't have Olive Garden in Turkey?
Definitely not.
Although-
And her thought process was, it's such a good deal. They give you unlimited bread the whole time. I'm like, you're not wrong, you know?
It is a good
you're
deal,
wrong.
especially in New York City. That's a great value. But did I tell you when Kevin and I found the McDonald's in Italy? We got McDonald's.
Oh, yeah. You were in Italy in high school, right?
And we went on the school trip. I went with Kevin, a Thunk contributor we've had on, who we talked about earlier. And he's like, I want to find this McDonald's. I saw it on the Travel Channel, and it's the fanciest McDonald's like in the world.
See, that I'm totally about, going to
And
the
he was
fancy
like,
foreign
and
McDonald's.
it's right
Heck yeah.
like next to the Spanish Steps, which is a big thing in Rome. So we went to see that anyway. So we got there, and it's all like beautiful marble, like Corinthian marble
awesome.
and stuff. And like everything's gorgeous. I got a pint of beer in a glass with a burger in a paper wrapper on a plastic
So
tray.
McDonald's
It was
got a liquor license?
And
I
no,
think it's just Italy.
it's just Europe. They're cool about beer.
just like,
there in
whatever.
a lot of places
Yeah.
we're not here. But it's just weird. It was like, I mean, I got the curly fries because they don't have that here, and the beer because they don't have that here. But we just wanted to go check it out. It was also kind of trashy of us to go eat at McDonald's.
No, but imagine if you were a Roman who came to New York and you're like, oh, let me check out their McDonald's. I wonder if theirs are marble too. And you just go to the McDonald's and
It's like, oh, these are
Flatbush,
slaughtering
like-
houses, basically.
Yeah, or like by the Jamaica train station or something, and it's just like,
oh, I guess this is how they house their homeless people, is in these bathrooms. Okay.
yeah, it's just like not the
No,
same scene.
the airport thing you were saying, Luke, was interesting because going from airport to airport, it was really interesting. Like getting into the EU was one thing, and just watching people. It was interesting to watch how the European people dealt with it, and you could tell who was American and who was European based on how they reacted to the airports. But it was weird when we got a connecting flight through Oslo. We had to go through customs just to get a connecting flight because they weren't in the EU.
Oh, right, yeah. You had to leave the...
But we didn't leave the airport. We just, we're trying to go from one gate to the other. And they asked us a bunch of questions 'cause I think they have a lot of illegal immigration stuff. So they're asking us all these questions and
I
stuff.
mean, they probably
And
checked your passport and just asked you the normal questions of like, what's your deal?
Well, we were a group, so they made us. They like grilled all of us to make sure we weren't, I don't know, smuggling things, or we all had the same story. So
Which,
maybe
like,
because we were flying to Amsterdam, they assumed we were up to sketchy stuff.
right.
But
Which, based on the amount of beer you guys drank in Germany, you might not have had the same story anyways.
yeah, I'm surprised I survived that trip, but the Germany side, to be honest.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like from your description, where I didn't hear from you for 2 days, and then all of a sudden you said, yeah, I'm alive.
Yeah, it was tough.
Joe, just say what beer we're drinking. We just cracked our second beer.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
what you got, guys?
We switched
Actually, this is from Johnny. He sent it up via friend of the
Ooh.
podcast, Mikhail.
Toter Claus.
It made it.
That's not our friend Toter Claus, but that's the beer.
Toter Klaus is the name of the beer.
Toter Klaus,
Toter Klaus.
which means dead Klaus, dead Santa.
What is this, like a sweet stout or something?
It's a Russian Imperial Stout.
Okay,
it's a
so-
bourbon barrel-aged Russian Imperial Stout.
Oh, it's pretty sweet. It's amazing. It's great.
What's the percentage?
Well, it was just bottled this year, so it could have sat for another 2 or 3 years, but that's fine. You can drink it now. Like
I'm aging
savages.
some stouts now, Johnny.
there's no chance I would have accomplished having it together with Joe if I didn't do it ASAP.
What percent do you think this is, Luke?
It's not coming across to my palate as being high percent, so
That's not a number.
I'm gonna guess it's either one of those secretly really high beers that's terrifyingly high, but I'm gonna guess like 9.
Johnny, what do you think?
I know what it is, so I got it for you guys. So
It's 10.6.
Shit. Higher than I thought.
It's the
little sneaky.
So that's a Russian Imperial Stout, which is a good beer for a travel episode. Not just that the beer traveled to you guys from North Carolina.
Yeah, can you tell us more about Russian Imperial Stout? Because that's not a type of stout I'm very.
So it's really cool. So Imperial in craft beer usually just refers to anything after you get over the 9-10% alcohol range, but it has a very specific historical meaning. So back in the day, beer used to be a lot more local. I'm going to be real quick here. I won't get bogged down in history too much. But
in the 14th century,
beer used to be really localized. And you couldn't reproduce beer in other places because they didn't have the same yeast, the same temperature, climate, ingredients, blah blah blah. So if you liked beer in England, you couldn't get English beer in Germany, or you couldn't really get good English beer in Turkey, or
you could barely get people around, let alone beer.
Right, that's how the IPA got invented, because the beer was too hot. It was too hot, and they couldn't make beer in India, so they would ship it with extra hops to keep it from spoiling, and people got used to it, so they kept making it when they got back. But so the Russian court in St. Petersburg was the Tsar. He was like the ruler of Russia, one of the biggest countries of the world at the time, and they are big drinkers in Russia, believe it or not. And they loved the English strong ales that would not be brewed to really be sold a lot. It used to be more like a country estate kind of thing. Like if you had land and stuff, you would have them when they were during brewing time. Like, yeah, brew the beer for the workers and for our everyday beer, but make a small batch of some strong strength barrel I can let sit till Christmas. That'll keep, and I can crack open for my bewigged friends or whatever bullshit. So it wasn't really like a common commercial consumer thing, but they loved it. Peter the Great came to England, I think once, came to London when he was younger, and he loved the beer, so they would order it, but it had to be really strong because that's what they wanted, but also just to be shipped that far. So the Russian Imperial Stout, a Russian Imperial meant it was going to be shipped to the Russian court. And the stout is because the stout was invented in Ireland and the English Isles.
I just always assumed they made it really strong, and they were like, "This is as strong as the Russian government."
Nope. Technically, it was to be, because it would be brewed entire. You'd fill up a whole ship because he's ordering it for at that level. You're not buying a beer, a bottle or a keg at a time. He's getting a shipload. So Russian Imperial Stout would be a whole production geared just to shipping it over there. But it's a great style that lives on now. It's really conducive to barrel aging because it would historically sit in barrels for a long time. So, and there's so many bourbon barrels in America. So you see a lot of barrel aged stouts, especially down here in the South, because bourbon is so big. I see it all the time. Like every brewery does, or not every, but
that's the most common type of barrel aging, right?
And so, but now Imperial just kind of means Imperial strength is when you get into the double digits alcohol with beer. But,
which is so funny when you give a beer like this to somebody who's used to beer at the 5% level.
Yeah, like a Budweiser or something.
Or even some lagers from
Blue Point or.
Well, I prefer to give those beers to wine drinkers that say they don't like beer because of the beer taste or whatever their excuse is. I'll give them a Russian Imperial or a Baltic Porter or something, a high gravity beer like that, and they'll be like, "Oh wow, this is like a dessert in a glass." It's like, yeah, because it's not a dry wine; it's a rich malty beverage.
So
I love.
Obviously, we're
stouts.
into craft beer on Thunk Tank Podcast, but so being into craft beer for me, I'm also really into coffee. When you're traveling to a different city, it gives you an automatic cool way to connect with the city that's not just let me be a tourist like everyone else. So when I'm going, for example, when I went to London, I ask friends, I ask the internet, and I figure out where the hippest coffee places. And then I figure out where the hippest craft beer places.
Yeah.
I usually figure out where the hip cocktail places, because our friend Kevin, who did a whole episode on cocktails, I don't know what number that was, 11 maybe. He always tells me when I'm going somewhere, if there's a cool got to go to cocktail bar.
Cool, yeah.
The one in London, I'll just say it. I think Experimental Cocktail Club is its name, and it's sort of in Chinatown, and you have to just sort of find this door. There's not even a handle on the door.
There's a lot of
you have to
places
literally
like that
pry your fingers into
New
the
York,
crack
too.
and pull it open, and then go up a dark staircase. And the whole time you're like, this can't be right. And then you walk into like a really cool cocktail bar.
And it's probably packed, right?
It was pretty packed.
Yeah, that's what's so funny, because I've been to a couple places like that in New York City too, where you would never think from the outside, and then you go through like a hallway or a kitchen,
and all of a sudden, the most killing Thai restaurant in New York, or
and
whatever the fuck
packed.
it is.
Yeah, it's packed. It's like, oh, here are your
most of the cool places
chocolate
are
grasshoppers. I'm like, okay, I'm eating
like
chocolate
that.
grasshoppers now. Like,
yeah,
this
like I
is
remember
happening.
just I was teaching my girlfriend and her brother in Istanbul the phrase "hole in the wall" for a type of place.
That's a great phrase.
They're like, what
too.
the fuck did you just say? A hole in the wall?
It's a great place.
And I was like, oh, I just mean like, because we found this particular hotel in Istanbul that you have to like, there's a lobby of a hotel and then it looks like nothing.
And then there's a
but
hole
if
in
you
the
go
wall.
up all the way to the top floor, there's a bar up there, and it has one of the most beautiful views of Istanbul. It's on the European side. If anybody knows Istanbul, it's sort of near the Galata Tower. And
Great tower.
it is a great
Galatia.
tower. That's, for example, that's the famous tower that you'll spend like 30 lira, wait in a line, go up. It'll be super crowded. You'll get a great view of the city. But the hotel is an example of if you dig a little deeper and
Yeah.
or just walk around with a curious kind of exploring mind, like you just find cool shit like that.
Right.
And so I think with traveling, there's sort of like the good way to do it and the bad way. And the bad way would be to sort of just feel obligations to do things.
Oh, like, oh, you have to go see this, and
Yeah.
that's actually kind
I mean,
of
that could be a
stupid
good thing. Like, you have to go to the British Museum. Okay, yeah, you should
Yeah.
go. But you have to leave a couple days where you just let whatever comes up happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want some flexible randomness, because you never know. Like, that's the adventure part of
Yeah.
it. Your whole vacation is planned out. It's really just you're just working then. So,
Well,
Especially in a
I don't
city
sense
where
not much
anything
of
can
it.
happen.
And it's not even that you're working. I think that's true, but even worse, like you're doing photo ops, right? That's something that you see so often where
What's your policy on photographs, like on vacation?
I'm down for photographs, but I don't think that should be
I
the,
don't give
the
a shit,
emphasis.
yeah.
No, that's what I mean. I've been to places where there's a million photographs of me there. Like when we were in Scotland, we were taking pictures at the castles and shit. Like that was awesome.
We're taking pictures left and right.
But
Wait, that was
then
Australia. Never mind.
then at the
But I've
pubs,
also been
my
to places
wife
where there's
would
no
constantly
evidence
take
that I've been
pictures.
there. What?
Yeah, but like at the pubs, Kara would make us stop what we were doing mid-sentence to take pictures. And
That's
at the
the
time,
thing I
it's
don't
really
like
annoying.
is you shouldn't have to stop. But what I like to do
But
is
now we have those pictures. But I'm a little annoyed, Luke. You didn't ask me for have to go beer places in London. I would have told you to go to Fuller's Brewery, one of the best bitters,
damn
I
it.
think, in the world. You fucked up. That's definitely where I'm going to go next time.
I mean, I'm pretty sure I talked to you about going to London for enough time that I thought it would come up, but
Well, I didn't want to be the guy
I
telling
also
you
don't
where
know.
to
Maybe
go.
I went to Fuller's and I don't know.
Maybe you were both wasted.
Probably not. London's a big city. It's in West London.
All right, I'm
so.
done. Can we stop talking about London? I'm over London.
Yeah, let's go on to the next thing.
What, Istanbul?
well, how about this? What's the most interesting or weirdest like random place you've ever traveled to? Like whether it's like you went there specifically or you were somewhere like I said and you wound up taking a train somewhere else. Like, is there any place that again that was unplanned, unexpected, whether that's a whole trip or an extension of a trip that you can think of that was really cool that you discovered something or
I've definitely had some cool extensions to trips. Like
Yeah.
When I went to Istanbul, actually both times we took a short vacation to Bodrum, which is like this beautiful southern coastal city.
Oh, right. That's when you crossed over and drove down, right? Like,
Yeah, I
crossed
didn't.
over the
I ended
street.
up flying down there.
Oh, you did?
We were going to do a long road trip, but it was going to be so long, and
Oh. Yeah, but don't you just drive like 300 miles per hour and ignore
You
the
can.
ignore the poster cop cars?
yeah, in Turkey on the highways they had these flat cardboard cop cars that, like, from far enough away, it looks like a real cop car.
That's amazing.
a lot of countries have that.
Like, for example, why don't we have that? It seems like such a easy, like,
cheaper idea.
cheaper idea than hiring a bunch of extra
I had
police.
never like even remotely heard of that until you told me that.
Me neither. I saw it. I was like, what the fuck? Because I saw the backside of it, the one facing the other direction. I'm like, there's a cop car without any writing on it.
Yeah, but like, what kind of lobbying power do police have in Turkey? countryside
Probably
of Turkey
some,
compared
'cause,
to
like, I mean,
compared to America, though.
oh, compared to America, like I'm sure there's less lobbying. There's more. Just
Yeah, that's why we're not that's why we're not giving away our cop jobs to cardboard. I'm just saying.
No, I'm sure that the cops are like, why would we have one piece of cardboard built that lasts forever?
Also, the story here of somebody.
Yeah.
The story here of someone like gets stabbed and they manage to like crawl for help to the cop car they see on the corner and it's fake and then they bleed out there. Like, I just see the negative press not being good.
Yeah, it's like, I guess just hire actual cops or something, you know? Like, why not?
But yeah, Joe, like the going somewhere else from your destination, like if you're going to another country, I think it's really good to like, one, have enough time there that you settle in.
Yeah.
You don't want to be like, oh, I'm here, now I'm gone, you know? And also go to a different place. So, like, take a train somewhere, take a bus somewhere. Like, you have to do the things that are, like, everyday life things.
Right, yeah.
So, like, I took that one road trip in Turkey, and then I also flew to this city called Bodrum, which in Turkish just means basement, because it's, like, at the basement of Turkey.
That's amazing.
Not in, like, a gross, like, all the shit leaks there kind of way. Like,
yeah, not like Florida's the Wang of the United States. Like,
it's more like a beautiful city with water that's, you know, so clear you can see, like, 20 feet ahead of you at the fish, you know, like, perfectly clear water. So that's where we stayed at this resort. That was an all-inclusive place. But one of the nights we were like, we got to break out of this routine. We're just like waking up, beaching, drinking, lunching, drinking, mini golfing, like pooling.
That sounds perfect.
To the beach, back to the pool.
Yeah.
Oh, now how about the beach? Oh, it's almost dinner time. Like, let me quick shower.
Scarf this shit down my gullet.
More beer while showering, you know. So that's one thing. But we left the resort one day and we took a bus and we went into the city that was like by that resort,
the actual city,
and we just walked around and it had such a cool nightlife. Like, I was kind of getting bored of the resort,
right? Yeah,
and then at the nightlife thing, I was like, oh, cool. I'm getting like the vibe of this place, like the tempo. You know, it's like the city that Turkish people go to vacation at. So at the resort was mostly non-Turkish people.
Yeah, there's layers of how and who is vacationing.
Yeah.
See, that's why I didn't like the cruise ship, because you're there with you all leave from the same port from New York. So I was just on a ship with a bunch of shitty New Yorkers.
Yeah, you want to be around different people.
And when you get to the port, like you did have the excursion, like we got to the Bahamas, but you're only there for like 4 or 5 hours, and there's 3 other cruise ships that are from similar places, and they all just dumped thousands of people in this area, and it's like, oh. So it's either people working for tourists or tourists. This really isn't like the authentic take on the, like, I don't even consider having gone to the Bahamas from that.
Version of it.
Yeah, it was very much the showroom.
It's like a recreated version.
Yeah, see, that's what bothers me about cruises. Like, I much rather go to an actual place and spend 3 days there than spend a week on a boat and then get shat out onto like the tourist section corner of an island for an afternoon or something.
And that's not enough time. You're like, oh, I can't leave this section because then the boat will leave without me or some shit.
And then I'm really screwed. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Like, for example, at this resort in Bodrum.
He's getting more ethnic.
No, it's hard for me. Like, in English, you would say Bodrum, and in Turkish, Bodrum. Like,
but that's changed as you drink more beer.
Yeah, fair enough. I speak Turkish way better when I'm drunk.
That checks out. I've kind of noticed...
Totally. Like, I stopped translating in my head, and I just, like...
I kind of noticed that. It's funny, like, because I realize it's really hard to say something in a foreign accent unless you try to I just try to overdo it now, and then when I ask people who speak that language, they're like, yeah, it's pretty close, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
pretty
your
close.
brain naturally does it, you know?
Yeah. No, it's just another accent.
At this resort, they set up these various nights to recreate aspects of Turkish culture. And they also chose other nationalities too, but let's say, for example, they would set up...
Are you sure you weren't in Disney World?
It felt like that. There were, like... Well, I mean, it didn't feel like Disney World at all. I shouldn't have said that, but there were, like, more Russian people, more Polish people than Turkish people, for example, and a lot of British people too.
Yeah.
So they set up this Turkish night where they set up the whole area, like the pathway between, like, the eating area and the rooms. They set it up with tents, and it feels like a sort of marketplace like you would get in a city where all these vendors are just under tents and, like, you're just haggle for prices, like that kind of vibe, you know? Buying leather bags and whatnot.
For, like, way too much, probably.
But it just all feels fake because it's all set up for the tourists.
It is,
and if you just take the bus into the actual city, then you walk through the actual version of that. which is this awesome area where in between the buildings they put up a bunch of big like sheets, and so it basically blocks out the sun during the day, and during the night all these lights are hanging, and you just get like the real authentic version of like walking through. They're called like mazalar, I think, just like these like little not official stores but just pop-up marketplace type areas, you know. Like, why would you get the version at the resort when you can just get the version for real? Yeah, this beer's good.
I'm loving this beer.
So
You're making me talk more, Johnny. Chirp in.
Yeah, I hate to. I was going to jump in. So perfect. So I was just in Germany, and I know talking about levels of tourists. the levels of the tourists you definitely notice it there. So I was in Munich or München, which is like the southernmost biggest city.
Wait, is that how they pronounce
Germany.
it? München?
I was gonna say bless you, Johnny.
Yeah, it's Munich. We call it Munich, but in America, but München. I'm sure I'm saying it with the wrong accent, but that's how they spell it.
It's easy to
München.
assume everything we say in English is the name of the city.
Yeah, and that's the capital of Bavaria. But
Pretzels?
like real far south in like you're basically in the northern Alps there. You're real far south in Germany. But they have the big Oktoberfest every year, which was a wedding in the 1800s that they just some royal wedding, and they were like, you know what, just open up the cellar. We're just gonna rage for a couple of weeks and drink all the beer in the country aside. And they did. It was such a big party. They were like, let's do this again next year. This was awesome, and they've been doing it for like 200 years now straight. But
minus a couple of wars.
It was just interesting because like we were talking, I went with a group of guys and we were talking about getting like lederhosen, which are these like it's a like reindeer fur or elk fur pants, like shorts. So these leather shorts with the suspenders and like the bright colored shirts that look like kind of tablecloths and the little hats. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? Lederhosen.
Yeah, I do. And
and the girls wear the dresses that push the boobies up and like the big dancing dresses with the square cut tops and all that.
This all sounds all right.
But we didn't want to be those touristy Americans. Like, you know, I thought it would be like, oh, it's the guy showing up to Dublin, like dressed as a leprechaun. That's offensive. So, because I'm not Irish. No, I specifically didn't when I went to Dublin.
Specifically, like you had to stop yourself?
He had the option.
Yeah, I washed off.
Maybe not.
Yeah, I had to wash out the face paint and everything before I went. But
Yeah.
It was just interesting because everybody was in lederhosen. I felt out of place in blue jeans, and most of the people there were either German or European tourists. But there were a lot of German people at the festival. But you could tell they were from other parts of Germany that they came to Munich.
So they congregate there regardless.
I guess so, or maybe they just live in Munich or in the suburbs around it, or it's within a day's drive. Because you would see groups of and it's young people, but people of all ages. But I get it. If you're 19 and you have some, if when we were 19, 20, and it was legal for us to go to Oktoberfest, it was an hour away. We would have driven. But it's just weird to see the different. You could definitely tell the American or the West Hemisphere tourists versus the European tourists.
Yeah, it's definitely good to stay away from other tourists.
And you could tell the Germans that were just putting up with yep, this happens every year.
Well, I feel
the
like
city makes so much money, it's worth it. But
and not all
everybody's
created equal.
The only people who didn't speak English though there, the only people I ran into who didn't know English were pretty much like people that either had no interest in it or people like were visiting from other European countries. Like, I learned German for this trip. They don't know English, but it was weird to see that levels of stuff.
How'd you read the street signs?
They're in English, probably, right?
No, they're in German. They're just really
most
really
places,
long.
Like a lot of places have everything in both languages.
Really?
Yeah.
No, it was all in German, but Lindver Master
Yeah.
America.
A lot of the streets would just be like 6 or 7 syllables. So I just memorized the first 6 letters.
It's
or the
definitely
last 2 or something.
Almost a disadvantage at the fact that we can go to any country and pretty much know that
somebody will speak.
Somebody
English.
will know some basic English,
Yeah.
even if it's just like a basic exchange of
But
money for
it's
a
not
product.
even that.
Like,
You know that somebody will probably know basic English, and in fact, there will probably be people there who are also fluent in English.
or even just in between. Like they might not be ready to start their doctorate, but they're perfectly fine to talk about
Where the bathroom is.
where the
at
bathroom
least.
is, or like any recommendations they have of places to go.
Yeah.
Like, I remember being in Istanbul, and
That's such a weird double standard with Americans, how none of us know a second language.
very few of us do.
Comparatively to other countries.
Comparatively, yeah. I remember bumping into some Americans in Istanbul. Like, at the airport, I was with a bunch of Americans, but I'm like, hey, you're on my flight, motherfucker. Like, I can't say hi to you yet. Like, we're still right here at the airport.
Yeah, we're still
But if I
in
see you out
America.
in the wild, I'm definitely going to say hi, you know?
Yeah.
And, like, we were waiting
Hey,
to get
America.
on this ferry to cross from the European side to the Asian side. It's a cool port called ldquo. And I had just been, like, hearing so much Turkish around me. My brain's getting tired. Just like, where am I? I'm tired. And then, like, I heard like a group walking by, and my ears perked up like a fucking dog when the doorbell rings, you know?
Yeah, another.
I was like, English, and it's American
No,
English.
it's more like when you see another dog in public and you're like, oh my God, another one. Yeah. It's not a human. Yeah.
And I'm like, should I say hi? What would I say? Like, is this normal to say hi? Like, I haven't heard English all day, but maybe it's everywhere. Like, but I think I said hi because we sat on the same like whatever.
But you accidentally said hi in Turkish, and then you were like, fuck.
No, I mean, I was just like I gave them the nod, like sup, you know.
I like how your English language version of a nod is sup.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
But I think it's definitely really cool if you're in a country where the language is different. If you can, obviously not, you can't always do this, but if you can have somebody who's from there or knows the language take you around, your experience will be like twice as good.
It's interesting too that you point that out, because I think going back to what we were saying earlier about how, especially for people who haven't had much experience traveling, because I feel like it's in some ways it seems kind of silly to say that, you know, oh, I haven't traveled, it's too late. But I feel like people kind of think that. Like, I definitely know
it's an excuse. They're making an excuse.
Yeah, no, but
traveling is hard. It's not easy. You have to do something.
But I definitely know people who actually, I think, they've tricked themselves into really feeling that way when
a complacent sense of,
they
well,
have the time,
I could have traveled back in the day, but now I can't.
Exactly,
yeah.
And they're able to do it. So I think for some people, it can seem daunting to know, well, I would have to get on this airplane and, you know,
and you might have to leave at 6 a.m. And guess what? That means you have to get up at like 2 a.m. because it's an internet. You know, like it's if you're going to find a cheap way to travel, it's going to be filled with elements of bullshit like that.
But what's interesting,
but you make it work because
what's interesting too is that because it's different here. Because in a place like Europe, if you went to other European countries, you would get different cultures that are very distinct, and you get the same thing here in America. But it's also an easier transition. So my point being, like, I know people who have never, we're on the East Coast, and I have friends who are my age, and they've never left the East Coast. And I tell them all the time.
It's a little weird.
Yeah, you have the time. Why don't you just take a trip, hit the road? Like, worst case scenario, you'll get back. There's not going to be any situation where all of a sudden people are yelling at you in another language if you just try to drive to Chicago.
And that's what's so cool is Chicago's going to have a different cultural vibe than New York.
There's going to be cool stuff there.
It'll be a lot of overlap because we're in the same country, but because the language is the same, you can very easily access the different culture within the language. That's why I heard going to London is such a great thing.
I was going to say, I heard some, because I did a road trip down south a couple summers ago. Just because I was
from Texas all the way up, right?
Yeah, I flew down to Texas, and then
that's a fun way to see the country, by the way, is driving instead of flying.
It was great. My friend was like, I want somebody to road trip with. And that's when I visited, we visited you, Johnny. Remember we stopped at you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was fun.
So that was the whole thinking, like, let's just drive through the South and stop at places.
Stop at places that you know.
Yeah, check it out.
Always recommend Richmond, Virginia. Like, a big shout out for Richmond. Like, that's a great place if you're coming up the East Coast. Make that a stop.
I don't think I quite made it quite up to Richmond, which
great
is ironic.
Shit going on there, and really cheap to stay.
Well, what's funny is I definitely ran into people where I was like, I don't think this is really English. Like,
oh yeah, and then if you go like our friend Nathan. He always makes a stop in Richmond, but he wanted to try something new, so he stopped in Roanoke, Virginia, and he said the place was a shithole.
Yeah, there's a lot of places like that.
There's some good brewers in Roanoke.
He stopped at one, and he said it was like so bad.
I mean, I live in the South,
but was so bad that he just like walked out without drinking it.
No, I live in the South, but you Northern Yankee assholes keep telling us how great it is.
All right, Johnny. So no,
you guys are the experts.
No, because here's the thing, Johnny. When I did my trip, I drove up through Tennessee or Arkansas. I saw some weird shit actually on that trip. But
I bet.
Some really weird shit. But when I drove up through Tennessee, visited you in North Carolina, like did some Appalachian Trail shit, and then came back down.
Appalachia.
I love how, like, that's the interesting part of the story. And you're like, did some Appalachian Trail shit. You know, I was in the woods for a few days.
There were some weird people in the woods, man. But that's a whole other podcast. And then I came down and I went through like Mississippi, or Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. Dude, Louisiana. There was a guy, we got to a gas station.
Never been.
So we got to a gas station. First of all, like, I don't want to generalize Louisiana, but like the person to tooth ratio is way off from like the few places I like.
Wait, what's the normal person to tooth ratio?
I don't know
how many teeth does a human have?
At least 20 something. Like,
so it should be like there should be 20
to
times
1.
more teeth than people.
It's like,
and it's like 1 to 1.
It's like 12, like on average.
Now, is that because
like,
some people have only one tooth and
yes,
the rest have normal?
Exactly.
Okay.
And some people also
it's a
have
skewed
12 teeth.
data set. Yeah.
But I remember we pulled into this gas station and this guy pulled up next to us and I'm just pumping gas. It's like 2 a.m. on a weeknight, random day. And this just like skinny, pasty dude gets out of his truck, which is just like, it's a pickup truck, just stacked full with green garden hoses. No,
That's right. That sounds normal.
nothing else. No shovels, no anything else. Just like stacks, like not like they're wrapped and he's selling them. Like they're dirty. They've clearly been used. And it's just green garden hoses. And he just looks at me and he goes, "Hey, how?" And then he starts
Evening.
And then he starts like being like talking like Boomhauer or something from like King of the Hill. And I'm just like, this isn't English. Like, I don't know.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And I was just like, yeah, nice
but
night.
See, even then, when like somebody says in like a southern accent, like, "Oh, y'all come from there, you come to bed," and you think to yourself, well, I got the basic tone of his question.
Yeah.
It didn't accuse me of stealing something. He's basically making conversation.
He seemed like a nice guy. I was just thrown off by all these other factors. Of
you
like
could just go,
garden hoses.
Yeah.
That's what I did. Yeah, because I was like, oh, this guy seems like he's not concerned about anything.
Yeah. He's not expecting a specific answer.
He's just shooting the shit at the the gas pump, and I was like, oh yeah, nice night, like
Yeah.
But like it was
in that sense, is it any different going to London than going to Louisiana in terms of the different type of English you'll hear?
Well, I don't know. Like, I really didn't understand what this guy was
That's
saying.
what I mean. Like, I can understand a British accent better than some Southern accents.
That's exactly my point.
No offense, I love them.
But there's also English
all
accents
of
that, I mean, if you've ever been in a cab in the UK, that's not like a language I know either. Like, you remember this, Johnny, in
There's
Glasgow.
so many different types
especially
of
if
British
I'm
accents or
drunk
Scottish.
and the cabbie's sober.
The what?
If I'm drunk and the cabbie's sober, which is common, it's very difficult sometimes.
Is it ever reversed?
I hope not.
In New York, it is.
I've definitely
specifically
I
our
lived in-
general location.
Yeah.
We had a famous Halloween. I think you were involved with it, Johnny.
Were you there when our cabbie was wasted?
I was thinking about the hallucinating cabbie I had. I lived in Albany, New York for like a year.
Oh, this all checks out, actually.
The only cab driver I got that didn't just wasn't wasted. Was
wasted on something else.
No, he was like a retired professor who used to be like a really smart guy, but he had a stroke and now he like sees things that aren't quite there.
Wait, did he have a stroke or does he just do a lot of acid or both?
I don't know, but his voice was all gravelly and he went on like a high squash diet and it helps with his hallucinations because he's like, oh, I see them everywhere. And I was like, oh yeah, what's that? And he's like, they kind of look like those guys from Star Trek, from Star Wars, but organic. You know the robots in Star Wars? Imagine those guys
C-3PO?
are made out of organic. But yeah, that's what he meant. He's like, but made out of organic material. He goes, I've hit a few even with the cab. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to die.
And so, Johnny, you're telling
who
me
did this guy run over?
You're telling me this guy just learned how to like understand that when he sees those are fake?
When he sees fake C-3POs?
I think he was convinced that his diet was linked to their appearances.
Wait, was this?
I don't know if he knew
But
they
their
were real or
appearances
not.
are clearly
but he was
hallucinations, so that could be true.
Was that before or after he was on the all squash diet?
No, he went on the all squash diet because it helps with them. He used to see them everywhere.
So
And
that's how he
they went
mitigates
down.
the C-3PO.
So Jordan
sightings.
Peterson's on an all meat diet. This cat's doing an all squash diet.
Yeah, that's why.
same
Yeah,
shit.
but that's why Jordan Peterson just sees lib cucks or whatever everywhere. You know?
Well, the thing about Pinocchio, man.
He just sees leftists and
just
Pinocchio's
weak,
really the sufferer,
spongy,
man.
Weak,
white
spongy
males everywhere. He
SJWs.
needs to help. Yeah. It's all about the diet, squash versus meat ratio. But no, my point was he was the only cab driver I had in that city that wasn't I wasn't convinced was drinking. One guy straight up was like, I could really use a cigarette instead of a tip. Could one of you guys give me a few cigarettes? And like, when your cab driver's bumming cigarettes off of you instead of tip money, because that's what he would spend, like, you're bartering now. And it's a certain level of...
Is that taxable bartering?
But that's also what happened here when we had that cab experience where the first cabbie...
He was drinking a tall boy of beer.
Well, no, it
while
was
yelling at the cop, right?
No, there was two of them. The first one, it was Halloween night, like years ago, and the first cabbie we tried to get in, he was clearly drunk because he was slurring.
Johnny was dressed like a Jedi, by the way.
And then he kept asking for cigarettes, and we were like,
with
no.
a sword.
And he's like, I just need a cigarette and I'll be fine. And it's like, we weren't questioning your sobriety, but now we are.
Yeah.
And then we were like, you can just go, and he drove away, and he immediately got pulled over.
Oh,
like,
shit,
up
you
the
saw
road.
it?
Yeah, he got pulled over.
So
like
imagine that
2
your
blocks up
job
the
is
road.
to
You
be a
could see it.
cabbie for the night, and you decide I'm going to get wasted that night.
And then the other guy fell into the van before he like.
Did you end up getting in the car with him?
We were already in the car.
Oh God!
You don't remember that?
Wait, was I in there with you?
Yeah, you were like next to me.
Oh, is that the guy that came into the party?
Yeah.
Okay, so Johnny, this guy, I think you had already left. I'm not sure.
We had our own guy drinking a tall boy. That was our van.
So both vans had tall.
No, I don't think your van was the tall boy guy.
Let's just like catch up in case anybody listening has.
Our guy was wasted.
We may have skipped some relevant details.
My guy was
we were
a
all
short
there.
kind of. He had a frog voice.
I think that was my guy too. It's just all
Well,
Long
okay,
Island
so
cabbies.
we were all together for a Halloween extravaganza a couple years ago.
That was
and
a
we
shit
were,
show, dude.
We were pre-gaming, right? Like at
The
someone's
town.
house.
No, we were pre-gaming downtown.
Well, at first at a house, and then we walked
That's
into
true,
the
yeah.
downtown
That's
area.
actually is what
and
happened,
we,
yeah.
I don't even know if we stopped at a bar, but whatever. We had like 5-6 beers, so we were all pretty buzzed. We may have had other things like coffee. No.
I was pretty coffeeed. For
So
sure.
we're pretty buzzed, and we think,
Yeah.
all right, let's walk into the downtown area and hit up the ATM, get some cash, whatever, and then
God, that's
go to
exactly how it
find a
happened.
cab, right? And so we go and we're flag down a cab, and the first guy is like, yeah, I can take you there. And we're like, this guy's weird, whatever. Half of the group gets in for one cab, and then half gets in the other cab. And when we arrived at the party, we thought, oh boy, do we have a story for the other guys. But the other guys were like, oh boy, do we have a story for them,
Yeah.
because both our drivers were wasted like crazy people.
Yeah, I would think I was in the other cab.
Well, I don't know if you were in
Gat
my
was
cab.
in my cab.
I was in.
Did your cab driver get a ticket in downtown Port?
No.
Yeah. So you guys got to the party before we did. We got in the van with the guy, and he already was making us nervous because he's just loud. He's just talking like this, but with more of a frog voice.
That shit, though,
It was so weird.
Random
It was
fucking
so weird.
weirdos.
Yeah, you're like, oh, this guy's a character.
And he looked, and he had that big under chin, just one though that looked like a frog, whatever that's called, their gizzard. And he was a short
One
dude.
line,
And
it goes a line
So
from
as
his
soon
chin
as
to
he,
his
as soon
neck.
as
Yeah.
he pulled away from the street, past the main intersection down there, he got pulled over by a constable, a town constable. And immediately was like, "This is bullshit. I know he's gonna fuck with me." Blah blah blah, and gave him a ticket because he didn't have like a town permit to be a cabbie there. He only had like the county permit. He didn't have the town one.
Yeah.
And so the guy, he's like, "Oh, I dropped it. It flew out the window." Like just bullshitting the cop,
Oh
giving
my
him a
god!
bullshitting.
I dropped my permit, which should be in the glove box or in some kind of
Right. Oh,
placard.
I just flew out the window. And he's like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah."
Wait, so you were in
And
this
he's
cab?
being real combative. Yeah. And then he starts yelling at the cop and saying, "I don't need that. You're wrong. I'll call my boss. You're being a cocksucker." Like cursing the cop out because it's a constable. He didn't give a fuck. So we got out of the van. We're like, "Oh, we're going to get another Uber or another cab." This was
a little bit before Uber
So I was
existed
like, "Oh, we're
in-
going to get
in where
another
we were.
cab." So I called the cab. We called the cab company. Like, "Oh yeah, it'll be about 30 minutes till we can get another
Yeah, it
van."
was
Because there's like
pre-Uber.
8 of us. So we stood there. We crossed the street and waited for 10 minutes while he was getting his information checked and yelling with the cop. And eventually it was cold, so we just went and we're like, "Hey, can we just get the ride from you?" And he said, "Yeah, sure, get back in." So it was really awkward. We like gave up on him and then got
then
back in.
needed him.
And then eventually the cop gave him the ticket, and then as he pulled away, he's like, "That fucking asshole," blah blah blah, and going on, and And he's like, oh, I'm going to come right back here. And we're like, why? He's like, well, they already wrote me a ticket. They can't write me another one for 24 hours. So I'm going to be down here all night now. Screw that guy. Even if I don't have any fares.
So he was admitting
right
that he was.
But it was as he was ranting about how cops are assholes and all this, we noticed he's drinking a tall boy.
Yeah,
He had moved when he got pulled over. This is what he did. He moved it to the cup holder on the passenger side. After he was done with the cop, he moved it back to the driver's side cup holder because that took care of
either
all
one is
liability.
good.
Yeah,
And I think by the time we got to the party, he had already your cab driver who came into the party with you guys had already left. And yeah, you were telling us that crazy story. It's like, well, let us tell you our crazy.
Right.
Oh, he almost crashed twice too.
Exactly.
He's turning around to tell us the story, and Gat had to be like, "I can hear you. You could face forward while you tell me your story." Like, please turn around and talk to you.
No,
I'm going to turn around and talk to you, even though I'm the guy driving. And
our guy
like,
came to the party when he picked us up. And
by the way, we were stuck with this cab company. It's the only one around.
But we wound
since we got a ride there, we needed a ride back.
We wound up in the van, and then all of a sudden, one of us was like, "Where's the cab driver?" And we hear a loud bang, and the van shakes. And I look outside, and I see the guy like shake his head, and he gets in and starts the engine. I'm like, I think he just stumbled into the side of the van, and then we're pulling away, and I'm like,
he couldn't even walk. Never mind drive.
I'm like, shit, this guy's definitely hammered. And then he was just like, he was doing the same thing. Like maybe it was the same dude, I don't know, but he was swerving on the road, and then we were just like, this is bad. This is really
how
bad.
I remember, because if I remember correctly, I stayed at the party slightly later than you guys.
Oh, maybe.
So you caught a ride home first. So I was not in the van. You guys all got into the van. But I was still inside. The cab driver was under the impression, like, let me make sure no one else needs a ride while I'm here. I want to fill up my van.
Yeah. Right.
And so this guy crosses a line. He gets out of his car, so leaves you in the car, right?
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
Walks into the party and starts walking around to people and asking, like, do you need a ride? And people are confused because they don't think, like, they're like, who are you?
He just walks into the party.
He walks in.
Yeah.
I remember I was playing beer pong and I looked over. I'm like, who the fuck is that bald, sketchy looking guy? You know, like he looks like 45 and everyone here is like 25 and a grad student, you know?
Right.
And
That's
he's like, you need a
hilarious,
ride? I'm like, who are you? You know, he's like, I'm the cab driver. I'm like, oh, no, I not yet. Like those guys do though. Like,
Yeah.
So that was my experience with
this is all why Uber came to exist.
This pretty much is
situation.
This was like right before
This is
Uber
how
started.
big fix.
Yeah.
By the way,
anyways,
Uber's pretty cheap in London.
I was gonna say this has nothing to do with
I forgot to mention
travel. Yeah.
Doesn't
well, it's
matter.
traveling. Yeah.
If you're traveling outside of the country and like you know you're talking a situation where you won't have a cell phone plan, I highly recommend this. One, don't bother getting a data plan where you're going, because like, look, you don't really need it, and you want to form most of the memories by being present in the space you're in.
I would agree
Bullshit.
with that.
I'm totally disagreeing with everything you're saying so far. Go ahead.
Let me keep going though. So you can still take pictures. You can still have your GPS work. So download Google offline maps so you know where you are, because most people don't realize that even if you have your cellular data turned off, the location GPS monitor will still work on your phone without any problems. So
Not all phones.
I'm not sure if it's all phones, but I can tell you on iPhones that's the case. So even if you take out your SIM card and you have no like cellular data plan,
It's still a GPS device.
it's still a GPS device. It'll show a blue dot. It just won't be able to load the map underneath.
Okay,
where
so
you are.
Luke, what happens when you decide that you're going to use your offline maps to go to a restaurant, but you don't know what they serve at that restaurant because you don't have data and you can't pull up their menu?
then go into a Starbucks and get Wi-Fi. So I can always.
Okay, so now you have to add a whole thing. You have to go find their login to their Wi-Fi in a foreign language. Or while you're on the train, you can just pull it up because you paid the $20 for 2 gigs of data.
Is that what it
I'm
costs?
just saying, I did what you're saying not to do when I was in Germany, and all the other guys paid their phones, their regular providers. You could pay like $10 a day, or,
and you get,
to
use
just
your
get
phone
coverage
like normal.
there. I have an international unlocked phone anyways because I'm shady, so I have like a GSM
Yeah,
phone.
that's what
So
you
I
are.
just bought a SIM card at whatever their version of.
At the airport, even, right?
No, I went to some store in town. It was better prices. And I just bought like 2 gigs worth of data and like 100 minutes or something cheap. And everybody else was having trouble connecting because they're piggybacking on the same European network. And I was actually a local like device getting priority or whatever. And so my stuff was more accurate and faster.
Yeah.
And it was cheaper. By the end of it, I spent like $20 on a short data plan.
I agree with you, Johnny. Just like putting it out there, it's just good
to have in case you get separated. So we got separated. We all had WhatsApp, so we were able to call each other. If I was able to call them from anywhere, they had to have Wi-Fi or cell service to get.
Yeah, it just makes it way easier.
Well, I just had data wherever.
You have more options.
Let me put it this way: I have a Verizon phone, so I told my Verizon service, look, I'm traveling internationally, and then. What that means is when you turn your phone off airplane
mode,
they're
like, we don't care, Luke. Stop telling us.
It will charge you $10 a day, so you can always turn your phone on
Johnny's out.
and have cell data for $10 a day. But there's another app. So Google Maps, you can download and choose an area and get it downloaded offline, so you can always see it. But I also highly recommend this app called Lonely Planet. Have you guys heard of this?
No.
It's a really cool app, and basically. It has not every city in the world, obviously, but like most cities that are worth going to. And each city you download for offline viewing, and it's about up to like a gigabyte of data, you know? So it'll be like every tourist location, the hours of everything, menus if it's like restaurant type shit. And so it's called Lonely Planet, and the same GPS effect where you don't have to have cell data. It shows the blue dot on the map. So you can always find out, where am I in London? What's around me? And you just type in around me, like food, around me museum, around me coffee, and things will pop up, and you can see like, oh, if I generally walk that way, I'll be there in like 20 minutes. So I use that mostly, and I never had to turn my phone on data. And I found myself being more present moment because even if I took a picture of something, I wasn't like, oh, I should like post that somewhere. I was just like, well, I'll deal with that later. Like right now I'm going to keep looking around at like the cool shit.
Yeah, but I don't know. There's a lot of downtime when you're traveling that you don't need to be present for.
That's true.
If you're sitting on a train or a plane or what?
Taking a shit in Starbucks, for example.
Yeah, that's good time to be spending researching that museum you want to go to, or that thing you saw there, or this bridge you're about to see, and be like, whoa, like.
Can I ask what did you pay for that data, Johnny? Like in total?
I think it was $30, and it worked anywhere. It was going to work in Germany and in
that's worth it. That's definitely worth it.
And,
that's what I mean.
And the last day when we got to the airport, I just started streaming Netflix because I had like 3/4 of a gig left. So I was like, I'll just watch high definition Netflix at the airport, and no one else could.
Right?
No one else could do that either. And they're like, wow, that's pretty cool. And I think I ended with like 100 or 50 megabytes left on the plan. So I definitely got my money's worth, and it ended up being cheaper than I think they were all paying $8 or $10 a day.
$10 a day is the going rate, I think.
Yeah, so I think I spent like $10 less than most of them, and I had better service than most of them. And
So, for example, in Turkey, I was there for 21 days at $10 a day. That's like an insanely stupid thing to do.
That is insane. But if you just got a monthly plan there, like a pay-as-you-go 1 month plan there, that would have made sense.
Like it depends on the phone. Like my girlfriend used to have an
calling
phone and did the same thing as you. She got a local SIM card and switched it out. But like a lot of the phones you get now, like they're very specific to only certain. I don't know what you would even call it, like frequency patterns that work with certain cell networks and all that kind of shit. Yeah. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but basically not all phones can you just swap out a SIM card for.
Right, yeah, I have a GSM phone, which is the kind you can.
Yeah, and that's why I think a lot of people still stick to Android. Like I think
I also
maybe
have an Android.
I don't know the specifics, but like something worth looking into if you have like an old phone around too. You might just have to bring a different device. I mean, look, it's definitely worth having cell connectivity, but I also just found it such a contrast because like if I go to New York City, which I do a lot, like I find myself still on my phone a lot. Whereas like in London, every time I had that feeling of like, oh, I'm a little bit bored, what should I do with my energy? I would find myself like going for my phone and then remembering like, oh, I can't.
You just can't.
Fair enough. All right, Johnny, what's the weirdest thing you've ever seen traveling? Go.
It's probably some of the gypsies I ran into in Italy. They like certain places with public bathrooms. They'll like set up outside with like a basket and strongly imply that they charge for the bathrooms when really they just scare tourists. Someone's yelling at you and you have to pee. You just give them some coins.
Is that what they do? That's how they do it?
And our tour guy warned us about it ahead of time. And he's like, I was like, so do you have to pay them? Like, what should I do? And he's like, you don't have to. I mean, they'll yell at you and make a scene and try to block your path, but you definitely don't have to. And I was like, all right. So everybody else just put some coins in, and I was like, no. And when I came out, this old lady started screaming at me and like joke. I think she really hammed it up because I started laughing at her. She started yelling at me and like doing something with her thumb. I assume was a gypsy curse. And like and then
Are
I
they
like
actually gypsies.
Yeah, the Roma. They have gypsies over there still. Huh. They're like in Peaky Blinders. Have you ever seen that show? The Romas,
the travelers, though, in Ireland.
Yeah, that's part of them. They used to be all over Europe,
but that's a different thing. They get insulted.
Well, now it is, but I'm saying historically there's been gypsy traveler tinker type people that just kind of go around.
It's like I was watching Pinocchio last night, and the circus like theater gypsy dude. They call him the gypsy.
Yeah, gypsies are a real thing.
Yeah, like it was a real thing.
I didn't realize that until I was there.
Don't fall into league with the gypsies. Like that's one of the morals of that movie.
I was told too. The
better question is why
we were somewhere in southern Italy, and the guy said, and we were in some town for lunch, and he's like, now if you're walking and you see like some gypsy kids run out of the bushes or something, just turn around and go the other way because they're gonna rob you. There's more of them waiting. They want you to stop, and they're gonna try to get something out of you.
Game of Thrones, the spiders, little birds.
Yeah. Well, no, they're not going to stab you in the kidneys.
They might.
Like in droves. They might, but no, I think he was just basically like, in this area, like it's tough. Things are tough right now. And, they'll just try to, they'll ask for money and then they'll surround you and they're not going to let you go till they give you money.
What if I like, hit them?
Well, because as soon as you take your wallet out, they just start grabbing for it too. So you can't just decide to give them some money.
But I mean, like, what if I like just like punch one in the teeth and run?
I mean, that's always an option. I don't recommend it. Kara's family travels a lot though.
And her
dad's a pilot. And they travel. They've moved a lot and travel a lot. So they have like certain rules in their family, which is always pee when there's a bathroom, even if you don't have to.
Yeah, you pick up little tricks like that, right?
That's kind of a good rule in general.
Don't let anybody rush you. That's a rule because that's how you feel bad. You're at the museum, someone rushes you, and then you don't. Like, man, I didn't really enjoy the rest of that day. Like the museum was the high point. I wish I spent more time.
These are good rules, but also it's like make sure you travel with people that.
But because I remember
are on the same page as you.
I mentioned that to your girlfriend once, where I think we were going somewhere, and she's like, I kind of have to pee, but I'll just wait till we get there. And I just said,
do it now. That was recently.
First. No, I said, what if we get into a car accident? And she just goes, I'm going to go to the bathroom.
It was recently, wasn't it?
What if there's traffic? Not even that intense. What if there's another accident? It's much more likely someone else is in the accident.
Right. What if there's just
traffic
behind it? Yeah.
And there's traffic. Now you got to pee on the burger patties on the highway. That happened to us too once.
Yeah.
God! Wait, on the way back from that concert,
I was just talking to our friend Kevin about.
It was
that
on the way to
driving.
the concert.
He was driving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's two more rules. Hold on, two more rules. You could sleep when you're dead, which that one saved us in England, in London, we're talking about is because the reason we went to the tower at 8 a.m. is I think we got to the room at like 6.
We were so
and we were about to,
dude.
We were so jet lagged.
We also drank the whole plane ride there.
But if you fell asleep then, you would have been asleep the whole day.
No, we would have slept till 4 p.m. So Kara set like 10 alarms, and we slept for 2 hours, and I felt so dead. It was so hard to wake up.
We were like,
and she was like, nope, you're in London though. Sleep when you're dead. Or back in America.
I think the expression goes, you'll have plenty of time to sleep when you're dead.
Or when you get back to America.
Not the best advice, like long
There's one last rule. It's just for travel. Is always pack half the clothes and twice the money, which is a good rule. I've tried to do that.
That is a good rule.
After your first trip, you have to go on first trip before you realize, like, I brought too much stuff because I panicked.
But also, error on the side of more socks than underwear.
Well, I always seem to pack enough underwear as if I'm going to shit my pants like 4 times during the trip.
Yeah. Twice the underwear, half the pants and shirts. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
For example, like if I'm packing for like a 3-day trip, like I just went to Tulsa for 3 days, Like, I found myself packing and going, all right, Friday underwear, Saturday underwear, Sunday underwear, and then I said, and 2 more just in case. And I was like, just in case what?
I always do that. I'm like, well, I'm going to be going for 7 days, so I guess I'll bring like a dozen pairs of underwear, and like always.
What if I shit my pants on 5 separate occasions the next week? It happens maybe once every 10 years of my life normally.
And
perfect
both times I've pooped my pants, I've been at home.
But what if the frequency jump is when I'm on my trip? I should just bring a dozen pairs.
Like how you say both the times I pooped my pants.
I mean, I assume. Yeah,
but also
really
socks. Like socks is a thing where, like, I very rarely, I've never been like done a travel vacation, adventure thing and said I brought too many socks with me.
Right. Here's another sock.
More socks than
tip.
underwear, I would say.
Because sometimes I've been on trips where my socks get so gross that because you're walking around for 12 hours, I'm like, well, I'm just going to throw these out. Like, I have more socks at home. They're kind of old anyway. I definitely bring some older socks with me.
I agree with that.
Here's a travel tip.
Give them one last hurrah.
Yeah.
I bring a...
Here you go, socks. Yeah. Have your final say.
Have a blast, buddy.
Enjoy London, motherfuckers.
But oh, shit. What was I going to say?
Socks?
Socks, yes. I bring a bunch of wool socks. I bought a bunch of thick wool socks to pack beer with. Is travel tip. You can check beer usually for anywhere domestically in the United States. You can check. You can take a cooler of beer and check that. You have to pay for it. It has to be under the weight limit, but you can just ship beer that way if you want. So you can fill your suitcase, your personal checked bag with beer, and I always do. In some European countries, you can, and some you can do a certain amount, or you just have to pay a tax fee after a certain amount.
It depends if you declare it or not. Like,
there's ways, but some countries you just can't bring more than a certain amount. Some you can. If you look into it, you usually can. So I put the beer bottle, usually it's a big bottle because it's craft beer. I put it in the sock with like cap down, and then I put it all the way in, and then I fold the end of the sock and I knot it around the neck of it. So the sock is pushing the cap down. And sometimes if it's a bottle conditioned beer or something, I might put electrical tape around the cap to seal it.
Just to make sure if it gets bumped, you mean?
Yeah, if you wrap it in wool socks, and you stack it in the middle of your suitcase and pack around it with other clothes, as long as the suitcase is packed pretty tight but not too tight, I've never, so far, knock on wood, I've done that maybe a dozen times now, and I haven't ever had a bottle break on me yet.
You think you're the only psychopath that wraps beer in socks? Or
I might, because I feel like other people tell me they bring like one bottle with them, and they're like, oh, I tried to pack it well, but it ends up being that it was moving around in the suitcase, so it's slammed from one side to the other, and it breaks that way, and then they're like, oh, it ruined all my clothes, I'm never doing it again. It's like, no, if you do it right, it's totally worth it, because you can get beer you can't get, Yeah. They don't ship it. They don't distribute it. You have to physically haul it back by hand like this. And it's really cool to get to do that. That's how I always show up with way too much beer at your house, Joe. Don't I always show up with it's like 10 or 12 large bottles, magnums of beer? You're basically like the Santa Claus of beer. You just show up at obscene hours with just a duffel bag full of beer. And then when I come back home, I show up with all these New York Northeast beers. But it's not like, oh my God, how'd you get these? It's not like, I want to clarify for the record, it's not like Johnny shows up with a dozen beers. He'll show up with 20, 25 beers. Yeah, and nice ones. And really good ones. Really good amazing beers. Ones. But you're right, that's a great way to get beers that you're not going to get otherwise. And it's so true, especially domestically. If you're worried about flying internationally with beer, I can tell you most of the airports I've gone through, the customs area, after you go through passport control, the customs area is dead empty. Nobody's working there or giving two shits about anything. If you declare on your form, I have beer in my suitcase, then they might care about it, right? But otherwise, they don't. I don't think anybody searches it. Here's another travel tip: you don't write specifics. You write $50 in souvenirs. That's all you write. Or in tchotchkes. I always put $30 in tchotchkes or something because that's usually mostly what's in my bag. My friend, he does this stuff. Like me, and it's good to meet people like that because he came back from Germany. He brought a Hefeweizen for me that I have to wait 2 more weeks before I can drink. But that's a yeasty pilsner, which is just it's antithetical to the style. And he said it was really good, and I can't wait to drink it. And I could not find it here. I couldn't even find English websites about it. Everything I had to have Google Translate for me. Whoa. And so it's like not a big operation over there, but it's a small brewery that does like a hazy, yeasty Pilsner that's supposed to be really nice.
How else would you have gotten that? Yeah.
And yeah, that's the only way to get it is because I'll leg beers to him, and he does it too. So it creates, a really cool beer trade network thing.
Yeah.
And it's all totally legal. Like I've never brought more than I'm supposed to, or brought it on the plane or anything like that, because that's not worth it.
Johnny, what's your vibe about like traveling with kids? I mean, like you probably traveled enough where you've had to like watch
it's
other
tough
people with
because,
kids.
Yeah, like I've been on planes with a screaming kid, and it's sometimes like, is this person just an asshole who wants to have their trip and like isn't putting the time in controlling their kid now because they barely put the time in raising it, so they're not going to start now. It's their vacation too, and they let the kid just like run wild in tourist situations because they're like, fuck it, I'm not from here, I don't care if it makes me look bad. Like those people. But then there's other times where someone's having trouble with a kid throwing a tantrum. It's like, yeah, they might be on the way to like their mom's funeral or something, or they're moving, and it's like there's never a good time to take like a 3 to 6 year old on a flight. But sometimes there's situations where you have to. So I try to be patient, but other times, you get the kid, the kicking your seat, and I really do want to just turn around and flick them in the nose or something. Like,
or even if you just give them a look that's more stern than their parents have ever given them, it's almost like their parents are numbed to just how annoying
I've definitely
the kids are.
I saw a kid beat up his mom on a plane last year. Like he just started wailing on his mom, and she was like, "Stop it, Terrence." I'm like, oh my god, this is a nightmare.
But like, is that a shitty kid, or is that a kid with like autistic outbursts or something?
I don't know what it was.
So it's hard to judge.
Like that shit would have gotten shut down if you or me tried that when we were kids. Like,
oh yeah, that just wasn't allowed back then.
No, it just wouldn't have. It wouldn't have. Luke's right though. Like we wouldn't have gotten to that point. Like we legitimately went on a trip once. We were going, I think. So we grew up in Florida. We moved here when we were kids or whatever, but. We spent our first, half of our childhoods down in Florida. And so Florida is great for that because you can do trips to like, Disney World or the West Coast, even like the Gulf of Mexico. And I think we were going to the West Coast. We were going to like Naples.
Well, the beach, once you get to the beach, there's sand, water, go play. You don't have to pay for the rides or anything.
Yeah,
there's all this stuff to play with as a kid anyway.
We were going
and it's free. Like, go run around. Leave me alone.
True. We were going for a weekend getaway to visit some friends of mom and dad's or whatever. And it was, they got off work Friday and we were going. And we're driving, and of course, we're in the back just being maniacs because it's the 1990s and you have, an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 4-year-old or whatever. So we're just out in the back losing our minds, and our parents are like, it's 100 degrees, shut the fuck up. Like, we can't concentrate if you're screaming, like, stop doing that.
And that's why you don't yell.
So then we go, okay. And then, of course, 5 minutes later, we're right back at it, like, hitting each other and whatever. And they turn around.
Because in Kidland, it wasn't 5 minutes, it was 20
strike
hours
two.
That went by.
Strike two. You kids better stop this.
Oh, I get it.
This is the last warning. We will turn this car around and vacation's over.
And you're like, they've never turned the car around.
All right, fine, whatever.
I don't believe it.
5 minutes later, same thing. My dad goes, all right, that's it. Turns around, starts driving back. We go, okay.
I can see your dad saying that too. All right, that's it.
We go, all right, we get it. Like, sorry. He goes, no, I warned you.
He's like, about baseball.
And we sit there.
Yeah, he's like,
because that's the way you teach a lesson as a kid. Because the first 20 minutes driving back,
you're going
in the wrong. You're going in the wrong direction. You sit there being like, maybe if we're really good for like a half hour,
that's what we thought. That's what we all were thinking.
It was far away. It was like a 3-hour drive, and we were halfway there. We're like, all right, maybe he'll do this for like a little bit.
He had to turn the car around for effect, but he'll turn it back.
Give him a few minutes, and like 5 minutes go by, 10, 15, 20, and then you realize you're not going back, so you're just not. You're sad, so now you're just not being loud. So then you just get that quiet, shameful, quiet
silence
for the rest of the drive back, and then you get home, and it's like, all right, go ahead, play your video games and shit, enjoy, and it's like,
what about Disney World?
Right,
you blew it.
Do you know how he knew he was serious too when he turned to mom and he just said, I don't need this shit. That's how I knew he was like, we weren't going on vacation
because he was
anymore.
thinking like, it's not a vacation for me to bring the kids along.
He bought dry ice. He bought meat to barbecue. Like
He did.
we were going for like 3 days. It was a whole thing.
Yeah, we were
So
invested.
that's why we were like, we called his bluff, and he was like, "Don't call my bluff."
Yep. And guess what? We were never little pieces of shit when we traveled again.
Oh, I was going to
we
say
weren't.
maybe you
We
were
weren't.
anyway.
We never
but-
did.
I mean,
go back,
of course
though.
we were,
never-
but we weren't as bad as like.
Yeah.
I never beat up my mom on a plane. That's for sure.
Yeah.
You know, like that.
We
We,
ne-
would have never done that. Like,
I personally
I have
think, like,
growled
don't
at
bring your
children.
kids.
Do you ever do that? I've barked or growled at children. If they get too close to me and there's no adults around, I'll just go because it's not threatening really.
It's more
right?
effective. It's
did you
more
say?
direct.
What did you just say,
like-
Johnny?
It's not threatening really. Like I don't want to threaten children.
You
I
don't want to say
children-
words that they can repeat to their parents.
No, well, especially that. But I also don't want to genuinely like terrify the kid. I just want him to shock him into being like, "Oh, where's my parent? What am I doing? I'm in public with like random things." And I also think it might help keep them from walking up to strange dogs, which I see way too often.
Oh, so you feel like you're helping the kid learn a lesson
I
about
feel like
dogs.
this
Johnny's
is
a
a good.
hero,
It's not
dude.
just, but also the look on their face and the idea that they're going to tell their parents this man
all
barked
about
at
the
me,
look on the kids'
growled at me.
faces.
They're not going to believe their kid anyways. So. Because they're gonna be like, what, that guy? And if they come up to be like, oh, hello, did you need something? Like, I'm not a crazy growling homeless madman.
Yeah, and all of a
So
sudden you're
it'd be
talking.
like-
you're like, sorry,
like,
your
what?
kid's
Did
lying.
I bark
didn't
at this
bark
kid?
at
It'd be like, I don't know this kid. I don't even know who this kid is. What are you talking about? It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, of course I barked at the kid or growled at him. Because
It's true. It's
usually,
like a.
and I think it's more ingrained in our monkey brain. The
That's what I
like,
mean.
The animal being scared of an animal.
I think you shocked the kid's nervous system at like a deeper level. Like the whole system just like clues into like,
the mall
oh, wait,
is
this
the mall,
a dog
yeah.
about to attack me?
When you go to the mall, that's the modern savannah in our social evolutionary landscape.
Yeah,
so you need to be
that's
aware.
what it
You
is.
can't. You got to look out. You know.
I was gonna say that about just being in a city, like especially like when I'm in New York City, like I'm a little bit more on guard than when
New
I'm
York?
around my house. And when I'm in Istanbul, I'm a lot more on guard because I'm thinking there are aspects to this whole workings going on that I don't really know about. Like I don't know if I'm in a sketchy part of town. I don't know if that's a weird behavior or normal behavior. So like I'm always a little bit more on guard. Like if somebody starts barking at me, like hopefully it's a dog, you know? They're pretty docile in Istanbul.
Are they? Well,
There's dogs everywhere,
they're
but
pretty
they're like
stray, right?
they're stray and they're hungry. Like at most, they'll kind of walk alongside you if they like.
do you know why? Because
like you?
the ones who were aggressive got killed.
That could be part of it. I mean, that's just generally true over the 10,000-year history of dogs. But
No, but I mean also like in terms of stray dogs, I feel like in a city that aggressive stray dogs aren't going to make it. Like you kind of got to be like
yeah,
a rat.
yeah, they
you know?
they put you down if
Yeah,
I
like,
mean, so a
you
lot
gotta
of
kind
times
of weasel your way around.
in Istanbul, the dogs will fight each other, and so you'll see
sad.
like, I mean, the dogs usually get fixed, but you might see sometimes like a dog in a certain area just for some reason like defending that area against other dogs, and it needlessly turns into like a scary wolf fight, like right in the middle of the
Yeah.
city, and the people walking around just kind of know like push the one dog out of the way. Because the dog is not interested in biting or fighting the humans.
Right.
They're just in some weird wolf territory game, and humans are just part of the environment that they live in.
right. It's
They're
like
still just playing
they're
wolf
like,
game.
They're like trees, the humans. Yeah.
We went to the forest outside of Istanbul and did like a kebab barbecue day. And like what you do after you finish is you have all these bones and you feed the leftover meat and the bones to a stray dog or many stray dogs. And so often the dogs will start fighting over that food, you know? Like the alpha will just like, you know, finish his real quick, then go over to the other pile and then fight the other wussy dog out of the way and like eat more, you know? That's how it works. Episode 40,
The
dogs.
circle of dogs.
How did we get back to dogs? I walk away for a minute.
I just
thought we
wanted
were
to
traveling.
also, this is the last thing I wanted to say of travel was there's a thing in, oh, he got us. I wasn't
That was
even,
actually pretty good.
I wasn't even
I'm
trying.
actually, I'm very satisfied that he finally got some satisfaction from.
He needs something.
from doing a good hang up, because usually I gotta admit his hang ups are very superficial and surface level. But that was a good one. I give him credit for that.
He usually wins
Go ahead,
only.
gloat, Johnny.
He usually wins only
earned
because.
it.
Well, he will gloat, I guess, but
Oh, he'll gloat.
he usually wins only because he's next to a computer. I actually had a story. I'll just say it real quick.
That's fine.
There's a mode of transportation in Istanbul called the dolmuş.
Dog sled.
And it's basically means like filled up, and it's just a bus that sits in a location, and when it gets enough people in it, it starts going on a certain route.
How long does it wait?
I mean, it will generally leave at a reasonably scheduled time, but like it tries to, I think as far as I know, they try to wait until there's like a decent amount of people on it, because they start their routes in like a crowded area, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's going to be filled up pretty quick. So as soon as it's pretty filled up, it starts driving. Now there's absolutely no like keeping track of did you get a ticket or did you not? There's just one driver, and he's got like a bucket of money right next to him. This cat... Oh, Johnny's calling back. You think it was a mistake?
No.
You think this is a mistake?
Yes. That's exactly what I think.
Hey guys,
What the hell
What's
was
up?
that?
I won the hang-up game.
Why are you back?
You're still on the cast, dude. This is so meta.
I know. You just blew my mind. What are you doing here? Go away.
That's so
What are you
cheeky
talking
of him.
about? I'm back.
No, but you know
That's
what's
how
going to
this
happen
works.
is they're going to hear you right after this, because we were still going.
I know. It's going to become a
Yeah,
Twilight
yeah.
Zone episode.
I'm actually really into that.
I had more stuff to talk about.
You realize he's like winning wasn't worth how much more I wanted to talk
In an
about.
unprecedented move.
Yeah.
I thought we could do a little. I have a serious question, a moral quandary.
hang up again.
No, really, for the think tank.
Double, triple
Yeah.
layer us.
Yeah, he's just like, I'm going to get those fuckers.
No, this isn't really related to traveling, but so I was going to do it separately. I thought we could do like a little 15-minute snippet.
Let us just hit stop on the travel episode then.
You call me back then.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'll call
fine.
you back in a second.
All right, this is all going
All right.
in the travel episode, though.
Yeah,
Okay.
right now.
Call me
Yeah.
right back when you're done.
Okay.
All right, bye.
Okay, Joe, as we were nicely summing up in our normal routine before we broke the fourth wall.
That's going to really freak out all 16 listeners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the dolmuş is this bus that drives around in Turkey. It's a type of transportation, and the guy is usually like doing some shit on his phone, driving in the insane traffic of Istanbul, and also taking money and making change for all the people that get on the bus, while other people are from the back are just shouting like, "Can I get off now?" And like, there's
Wait,
so
did you
much.
did you go on this bus?
Many times, yeah. When in Istanbul, it's like a cheaper way to get around. And like my first thought is like, there's no way it's like a really crowded bus. Picture like a subway that gets so crowded you can't even see who's on it and know
Right,
how
yeah,
many people.
yeah.
Like, there's no way this guy's keeping track of like who paid or who didn't pay or what the fuck's going on. There's just sort of a system
A
of like
bucket of money
some money is coming in and people are riding.
coming
you
and
know?
going. Yeah.
And it's so
awesome.
crazy. Like, I'm just seeing.
I
this
love that shit, though.
honestly, like there were 2 times in Istanbul. Once I was on the dolmuş and I was just like, this is fucking crazy, but like cool. And then the other time I had like a few beers at a brewery, and then we took a cab ride across from the Asian side back to the European side to meet some people for lunch. And so this cab driver, it was like the coolest cab ride I've ever been on. It was insane. Like, I just kind of said to myself, I sure hope I don't die. But here I am. I'm not going to like get out of the cab. It's like when you get on a roller coaster, you go, well, I signed up for the ride. I can't cancel halfway through, you know? In terms of the cab, I guess you could just freak out.
But what was actually cool about the cab?
The speed that he was driving in and out of traffic.
Yeah.
He would just like get up to like a bulldozer and like honk at them, and they're like, it's construction. He's like, oh, like go fuck yourself, you know, like, and then like drives down the other way.
Sounds very New York. I like that.
It is. It's just sort of like there are no rules and just get there as fast as you can.
Right.
I mean, if you're Turkish, if they smell that you're a tourist, it's very likely they'll just fuck with you and somehow like, you know, be able to charge you like an insane amount, and which
you mean
isn't
extortion.
Well, yeah, I mean they'll just like trick you into like, you know, they'll take the way that's really slow, or they'll drive like twice as long to get to the same place.
Yeah, no rush.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, I think traveling is something that I would say most of the cultural traits that I don't like about certain people and certain types of areas of the country are often, I think, you could cure those problems through traveling.
Well,
because it would just smack you out of like the sort of centeredness or the
I think as well
stuckness in your own culture.
One thing I want to say too is that I feel as if there's also a situation, or there's situations where people don't think of travel as accessible to themselves. And I think just the world we live in today, it's so much more accessible than people realize.
Yeah.
And that
way more, way more.
Well, again, like it can seem daunting, and it's like that's not to say like you need to save up thousands of dollars to go to France or something like that.
Depends where you're going and when you're going. Like, of course.
I remember when even like so. For example, when I used to teach in New York City, I remember we organized a trip once to a farm upstate. Wasn't far upstate. It was like an hour and a half drive, like, which is, that's reasonable.
And it was further than the kids had gone.
It was farther than some of those kids who were like, 18, 19 years old. No exaggeration, they had never left New York City.
Yeah.
Like,
I think that's a big part of how you build your worldview.
Yeah.
If it's like you've never left a city.
But here's the thing, like
that can be fucked up.
And as an example, like I remember, so we went to this farm and it was like it had everything. It had plants and, crops and livestock. And there was this place where you could go and you could hold chickens and like hang out with chickens, pet chickens, talk to the chickens, whatever. And I remember a couple of students holding the chickens and they were blown away because they had never seen a live chicken.
They just assumed chicken was the thing in the store.
Chicken was the thing that you get at the fast food place.
Yeah.
And I remember this one student, it really stuck with me. He was holding this chicken, petting it, and he said, like, I feel kind of bad. I said, what do you mean? He's like, well, I don't want to eat them.
Yeah, cute little chicken.
And I was like, whether or not, you're a vegetarian, you're a meat eater, the fact that you're now thinking of that as what
you're
it
a layer
actually
deeper.
Is. You're a layer deeper, which is something that's really cool. And that's something that student didn't have to travel very far to realize. But in some ways, he did have to travel really far.
For him.
Because he never had access to that like type of trip, and he never thought
that's the perfect model for
like,
why traveling is useful. Right?
Well, that's what I mean, too. Yeah. Like, even 50 years ago, if you lived in the city and you didn't have a car, how would you know where to go? Whereas today, we have the internet. You can look up, I could take a bus.
I mean, that's why people went to travel
and
agencies, right?
Yeah.
It's like, where's the place to go? Like, how else would you find out? Call someone?
So I think my point being, with a little bit of curiosity and a little bit of initiative and a little bit of planning with, again, like we talked about, the mindset of being flexible and open to adventure, I really think it's something that everybody should consider at different levels, right? Like, you don't have to say...
Find a level outside of your comfort zone, even if only slightly, though.
Yeah, and start there. And, go whether
for a lot of people,
another city, like somewhere out in the country.
For
like
some
wherever.
people, it might just be like spend a weekend in Chicago. Fine.
Yeah.
Like if you're from New York and you find a cheap flight to Chicago, find a cheap hotel, and your flexible dates. Like, but for a lot of people, that difference is, I've been to a lot of places around the country, but I've not been outside of the country. And like I was saying this to my dad, like, because when I told him I'm going to London, he was like, "How the fuck are you managing that?" I was like, "Dad, it was $300 round trip. Like, so we each paid $300. We had a friend there. We had a place to stay. Like, he's like, what? In his mind, he just assumed it would be like $1,000.
Well, in his mind, he assumed
ocean.
Like, he's like, what do you do with the kids?
Or that, yeah.
And it's like, so for some situations, it's like, so it's not like, I want to say that
it's
too.
more accessible than you think. Of course, it depends on everyone's situation.
It depends on your situation.
I highly recommend this thing called Scott's Cheap Flights. If you sign up for it, they'll send you an email probably every few days, and it has like the cheap cities that you can fly to from different destinations. And that's how I found these cheap tickets to London. I use that all the time. I just bought tickets from New York to Denver for March, and those tickets are often between $300 and $400, and this was less than $200. It was like $180.
Nice.
You can find really cheap tickets, and I think it's probably the number one thing you can do to sort of. I think it's important as a human to be pushed out of your comfort zone and kind of placed in a weird situation, and then find out like who you are and how you would deal with that. Like, and I always tell people, go to London first, or just generally to like an English-speaking foreign country.
Yeah, someplace that has a closer
and
context.
that's like a good middle ground. And then,
or someplace where you'll be able to
get by.
Yeah, you'll get by. You'll still get by in like Spain or Germany.
Of course,
or something.
I mean, I'm not saying don't go to those places, but if you want to do something and you're feeling like, I don't know, dude, London is like is such an easy one. And then next time you can go to some place with a different language, maybe even spend some time learning that language.
Like Istanbul or Turkey in Istanbul.
Like I highly recommend that too. I mean, like it's a little bit of a weird place if you're going there just as a foreigner and you're not like what would you say, experienced traveler,
But you also had an inside.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think I would have had
there.
a good time without the inside, getting toured around by people who grew up there and lived there.
Yeah. That helps.
Especially like the logistics of in a city where, it's very common to get taken advantage of for prices.
Yeah, and all of a sudden you're at the fucking Olive Garden in the middle of, Istanbul.
I don't think it doesn't exist.
Yeah, but they might have their version of Olive Garden, Luke.
Oh, yeah, of course.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like not so good food that costs twice as much.
Right, and you're like, what? It had unlimited, what's their bread that they use there? Pita? Something like that.
They have a lot of pita bread. They also have this Turkish bagel called a simit.
Yeah, see, you conceivably might hear unlimited of that and be like, oh, I'm gonna go there.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, that fucking
idiot.
American tourist, All right,
we should call Johnny back.
We're done.
Even though he already called us back after hanging up.
I'm confused, man.
I'm confused too.
This episode was weird.
Go travel. Yeah, this was kind of a
So check us out on our new website, thunktankpodcast.com. Oh, yeah. It's real. It's happening. It's here.
Maybe I'll post this episode in a blog post and just throw up like the pictures I took from London, Turkey. Joe, send me whatever
and
you have.
Share with us your travel experiences. We'd like to hear more.
Yeah. Also,
somebody's listening. I don't know who's downloading
Watch
this,
Anthony Bourdain on Netflix.
He's
watch travel shows like that. That's a great way to get to know an area. All right, I'm going to end it. Peace.
Cut it.
Boom.
Later.
Oh, man. I got up to pee. And I was pretty sure when I got back they were going to hang up on me. And anytime Luke does I just one more. Oh, I gotta. He's always about to hang up on me. He's just not that good at it. So, welcome. I'm an idiot. It's over. Thank you for listening. If you listen this long, and sorry that this wasn't really helpful. If you want to travel and are looking for advice, but maybe we'll do a part 2. With more practical stuff, like, don't make the OK sign in Brazil or wherever it was I was reading. Actually had a list of stuff we never got to, but oh well, I'm not going to get hung up on first. So thanks again, and check it out. See what else we got. See if you like it. If you want to come visit some of the places we talk about, I'm going to keep getting louder each episode, and I'll see you later.